In this video, we're breaking down 3 hours of SpongeBob's absolute worst episodes. Let's get started. First up we got A Pal for Gary. The episode starts with SpongeBob getting ready for work at the Krusty Krab while Gary is at home having a perfectly fine time watching television and drinking soda from a cowboy hat. Gary seems completely content being alone, relaxing on the couch with his snacks and his favorite Western show playing on the screen. But SpongeBob walks out the door, convinced that Gary must be suffering from terrible loneliness, even though there is zero evidence of this in what we actually see. Gary is literally laughing and enjoying himself the second SpongeBob leaves. This sets up the entire problem with the episode right from the start, because SpongeBob is solving a problem that does not exist. At the Krusty Krab, SpongeBob sees a customer with a pet worm, and Mr. Krabs tells the customer that pets are not allowed inside the restaurant. The customer says he could never leave his worm outside because the worm gets too lonely and upset when left alone. Mr. Krabs quickly changes his mind when he realizes the customer wants to buy food for the pet, and he tells SpongeBob to serve them. This moment makes SpongeBob feel guilty about leaving Gary home alone all day, so he calls Gary on the phone. But Gary does not pick up because he is busy watching television and having a good time. SpongeBob hears his own answering machine message and assumes Gary is too sad to answer, when in reality Gary is just enjoying his show. When SpongeBob finishes his shift that night, Mr. Krabs asks him to help retar the parking lot. SpongeBob explains he needs to get home to his lonely pet snail. Mr. Krabs lets him go but tells him he needs to come in 5 hours early the next day to finish the job. As SpongeBob walks home feeling guilty about Gary being alone, he sees a father and son with a new pet. The father tells his son that now he has a friend to keep him from feeling lonely, and the father can go on business trips without guilt. This gives SpongeBob the idea to get Gary a companion pet. SpongeBob runs up to a mysterious store owner selling nudibranchs. The store owner immediately tries to warn SpongeBob that these creatures are rare and extremely dangerous. She specifically tells him these creatures can be very unstable, especially around other pets. She even shows him a picture demonstrating how aggressive they are with other animals. But SpongeBob completely ignores every single warning she gives him. He does not listen to a single word. He just grabs a green nudibranch and runs off without even paying for it. The store owner sighs and says they never listen, which tells us this happens all the time with customers ignoring her warnings. SpongeBob brings the creature home and names it Puffy Fluffy. He interrupts Gary while Gary is watching his Western show and introduces the new pet. SpongeBob sets Puffy Fluffy down next to Gary and tells them to get to know each other while he makes enchiladas for dinner. The moment SpongeBob is not looking, Puffy Fluffy snarls at Gary with a threatening expression, but when SpongeBob looks back, Puffy Fluffy instantly returns to looking cute and harmless. This pattern repeats throughout the entire episode. SpongeBob brings out food for both pets and puts the bowl down. When Gary tries to eat, SpongeBob stops him and scolds him for not having manners. He tells Gary to be nice and share with Puffy Fluffy. SpongeBob even writes Puffy Fluffy's name on the food bowl. The second SpongeBob walks away to eat his enchiladas, Puffy Fluffy scares Gary away from the food, eats everything in the bowl, and then chases Gary around the house trying to attack him. SpongeBob comes back and sees Gary hiding behind the television looking scared. Instead of asking what happened or showing concern, SpongeBob scolds Gary and tells him it is not nice to ignore new friends. He picks up both pets and forces them to play together with toys. Gary tries to play nicely with the squeaky toys, but Puffy Fluffy tears one of them apart with sharp teeth, and the pieces land in SpongeBob's enchilada dinner. Puffy Fluffy then tries to bite Gary with his jaws wide open. Gary jumps onto SpongeBob's head to escape. SpongeBob gets angry at Gary for ruining his dinner and for refusing to show respect for their new friend. As punishment, SpongeBob decides to put Gary to bed early. He places Gary on a small bed in the living room and then puts Puffy Fluffy right next to him on the same bed. Gary looks terrified. SpongeBob covers them both with a blanket and tells Gary he hopes Gary is happy now, and maybe Gary can extend that happiness to his new friend. Then SpongeBob walks upstairs to his own bedroom. Gary tries to go to SpongeBob's room for help because Puffy Fluffy is snarling at him under the covers. Gary bursts through the door and jumps on SpongeBob's bed, meowing in fear, but SpongeBob just gets mad at Gary again. He carries Gary back downstairs and tells him that Puffy Fluffy is perfectly harmless. He pulls back the blanket to show Gary that Puffy Fluffy appears to be sleeping peacefully. SpongeBob puts Gary back in the bed, covers him up, turns off the light, and closes the door. The moment SpongeBob leaves, Gary sees that the peaceful sleeping Puffy Fluffy was actually just shed skin. The real Puffy Fluffy has transformed into a massive monster and is in the kitchen eating food from the refrigerator. Gary goes to the kitchen and finds Puffy Fluffy as a huge green monster with 4 long tongues that have mouths and sharp teeth of their own. The creature roars at Gary and Gary screams. Puffy Fluffy chases Gary all through the house while SpongeBob sleeps peacefully upstairs, completely unaware. Gary grabs a pan to defend himself. The chase continues into SpongeBob's library, where Puffy Fluffy uses his tail to knock over the fireplace, starting a fire that spreads through the library. Gary has to put out the fire by himself with a bucket of water from the bathroom. Then he sees Puffy Fluffy destroying several of SpongeBob's pants with his teeth. Gary tries to stop Puffy Fluffy by biting his back, but the monster throws Gary into a bookshelf. This destruction continues all night long while SpongeBob dreams about being at his grandmother's house, sleeping soundly through everything. The next morning, SpongeBob wakes up and notices a crack in his ceiling. He assumes there must have been a seaquake during the night. He opens his bedroom door and it falls over. He walks downstairs and sees his entire library is destroyed. His prized memoirs of T.S. Halibut are ruined. His clothes are torn to pieces. SpongeBob gets angry and immediately decides Gary must have done all this out of jealousy about the new friend. He does not consider any other possibility. He goes to the exercise room and finds the door locked. He demands Gary open it immediately. Inside the room, Puffy Fluffy Monster has Gary wrapped up in his 4 long tongues and is about to eat him alive. Gary is whimpering in fear. SpongeBob breaks down the door and sees Gary in the monster's grip, clearly about to be eaten. This is the moment that made this episode earn its reputation as one of the absolute worst in the entire series. SpongeBob sees Gary being held up by a giant monster with multiple mouths full of sharp teeth, and instead of helping Gary or showing any concern, SpongeBob yells at Gary to put Fluffy down right now. He calls Gary a bad boy over and over again. He scolds Gary repeatedly while Gary is literally in the process of being eaten by a monster. Puffy Fluffy Monster gently sets Gary down on the floor. SpongeBob continues yelling at Gary. Then SpongeBob notices another creature in the room and asks if it is a friend of Fluffy. At this point, Puffy Fluffy Monster grabs SpongeBob with one of his long tongues and starts eating him too. SpongeBob says this is starting to hurt, but he still does not understand what is happening. Gary has to save SpongeBob's life. Despite being terrorized all night and despite SpongeBob treating him terribly, Gary puts on his cowboy gear and uses his lasso skills to fight off Puffy Fluffy Monster. He hits the monster in the face with his leash and makes it release SpongeBob, who is now covered in monster slime. Gary lassos the leash through all 4 of Puffy Fluffy's tongues and pulls really tight. The monster runs outside the house, roaring in pain, and escapes into Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob runs after the monster, calling for Fluffy to wait and come back. Then SpongeBob turns to Gary and asks what Gary has to say for himself. The episode shows Gary looking at the camera in disappointment. The final scene shows SpongeBob at the Krusty Krab bringing Gary to work with him. SpongeBob says this is better, and from now on he is taking Gary wherever he goes, so Gary will have no more lonely days at home. Mr. Krabs sees Gary and asks what that filthy animal is doing in his kitchen. SpongeBob explains he brought Gary to help out and puts a Krusty Krab employee hat on Gary. Mr. Krabs gets excited about free labor and hands Gary a spatula, telling him to serve up food. Gary looks at the camera looking frustrated and unhappy. This episode earned a rating of 3.3 out of 10 on IMDb, making it the lowest rated episode in the entire history of SpongeBob SquarePants. On SpongeBuddy Mania, a website dedicated to SpongeBob fans, the episode received an average score of 1.8 out of 10 based on 227 ratings, which was also the lowest rating of any episode on that site. Fans universally consider it one of the absolute worst episodes ever made, often ranking it alongside other hated episodes like One Course Meal and Stuck in the Ringer. The episode was written by Casey Alexander, Zeus Servas, and Richard Purcell, and it aired on the 2nd of January 2010 during Season 7 to 4.28 million viewers in the United States. The content creator, Phantom Strider, ranked this episode at number 8 on his video about the worst episodes of good cartoons. He described it as the closest thing he had seen to animal torture in a cartoon. He called the imagery unnerving, and said the sounds Puffy Fluffy made were legitimately disturbing. He criticized SpongeBob for being out of character, and called his treatment of Gary sadistic. He referred to Puffy Fluffy as a Leviathan horror. These descriptions match what viewers see in the episode, with Gary being chased, attacked, and nearly eaten for an entire night while his owner sleeps peacefully and then blames him for everything. The core problem is that SpongeBob shows an extreme level of ignorance that goes far beyond his usual innocent stupidity. The show established over many seasons that SpongeBob genuinely loves Gary and cares about his well-being. In earlier episodes, SpongeBob goes to great lengths to help Gary and protect him. But in this episode, SpongeBob ignores explicit warnings from someone selling dangerous animals. He ignores every sign that Gary is in danger. He ignores Gary trying to tell him something is wrong. He witnesses destruction all over his house and immediately blames Gary without considering what else could have caused it. Most shocking of all, he sees Gary being actively eaten by a giant monster, and his response is to scold Gary for being mean to the monster. Even at the very end, after Gary saves his life, SpongeBob still does not apologize or realize his mistake. He asks Gary what he has to say for himself as if Gary did something wrong. Then he forces Gary to come to work at the Krusty Krab, which Gary clearly does not want to do based on his frustrated expression. There is no moment where SpongeBob learns anything or grows as a character. There is no acknowledgement that he put his beloved pet in mortal danger through his own negligence. The episode just ends with Gary in a worse situation than when it started. Many fans pointed out that the store owner tried multiple times to warn SpongeBob about how dangerous these creatures are around other pets. She specifically said they are extremely unstable, especially around other pets. She showed him visual evidence of their aggression. But SpongeBob did not pay attention to a single word she said. He just grabbed the creature and ran off. The store owner even comments that customers never listen to her, suggesting this is an ongoing problem, but SpongeBob still had the responsibility to listen to someone selling dangerous animals. The episode also creates unresolved questions about what happens to Puffy Fluffy after he runs away. The creature is now loose in Bikini Bottom, potentially threatening other pets and residents. The episode showed a small child with his father buying the same type of creature from the same store owner. If that child's family also ignored the warnings, there could be multiple dangerous monsters roaming the city. The episode does not address any of this. Reviewers noted that the premise could have worked if the episode had been structured differently. If SpongeBob had been oblivious to the danger until the morning, then woke up and immediately realized his mistake when seeing the destruction, the episode could have been about him learning to listen to warnings and pay attention to Gary's concerns. If SpongeBob had apologized to Gary and worked with him to safely return Puffy Fluffy, it could have been a story about taking responsibility for mistakes. Instead, the episode makes SpongeBob remain completely unaware of his failures from start to finish. The treatment of Gary throughout the episode particularly upset fans who care about the character. Gary spends the entire night fighting for his life against a monster that is much bigger and stronger than him. He tries multiple ways to defend himself, but nothing works because Puffy Fluffy is too powerful. He has to put out a fire by himself to save the house. He tries repeatedly to tell SpongeBob what is happening, but SpongeBob refuses to listen. Then when Gary heroically saves SpongeBob's life using his cowboy skills and lasso, risking his own safety to rescue someone who has been treating him badly all episode, SpongeBob's response is to ask what Gary has to say for himself. Gary gets no appreciation, no thanks, and no apology for everything he went through. The episode represents what many fans identify as a major problem in Season 7 of SpongeBob SquarePants. During this season, several episodes featured characters acting much worse than their established personalities and facing no consequences for their actions. Mean-spirited humor became more common. Characters who were supposed to be likable became hard to root for because they treated other characters cruelly without learning or growing. This episode demonstrates all of those issues in one concentrated story that lasts less than 11 minutes but manages to frustrate viewers more than much longer episodes of other shows. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have one course meal. The episode begins at the Krusty Krab with Mr. Krabs in his office. He turns off the lights, lights an incense stick, turns on the radio, takes off his shirt, and bathes in money. He sniffs the air and says something does not smell right. He opens the door to the kitchen and asks SpongeBob what is burning. SpongeBob sniffs and says he would say a high-grade explosive. Mr. Krabs panics when he hears the word explosive. The scene cuts to outside, where Plankton is flying on a glider laughing evilly. Plankton yells for Mr. Krabs to enjoy his gift and activates a bomb that blows up the roof of the Krusty Krab. Mr. Krabs yells that he just had the roof redone last week. Plankton says Mr. Krabs will be redoing it after Plankton is through with him. Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob to ready ammunition. SpongeBob takes off his Krusty Krab employee hat and it reveals a can of peas. Mr. Krabs opens the can with his claw and pours all the peas into SpongeBob. He then uses SpongeBob as a gun and fires peas at Plankton. The peas shoot through Plankton's air glider, but Plankton blows a bubble over himself that deflects all the peas. The deflected peas hit frying pans and one pan falls and hits SpongeBob. Plankton fires a missile at them. Mr. Krabs picks up SpongeBob and uses him as a shield, but the missile just falls straight to the ground without going off. Mr. Krabs laughs and calls it another dud. Plankton pushes a button that transforms the missile into a robotic arm that squeezes Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob. Mr. Krabs tells Plankton he is playing with fire. Plankton says there is no need to get worked up and tells Mr. Krabs to just give him the secret formula and he will be on his way. Mr. Krabs refuses. Plankton presses a button to make the arm squeeze harder. Mr. Krabs tells him to go jump off a plank. Plankton says he has ways of getting the information he needs and tickles Mr. Krabs with a feather. Mr. Krabs laughs wildly. Plankton tickles Mr. Crab's nose, causing him to sneeze and blow Plankton to the ground. Plankton says he sees Mr. Krabs will not crack, but he does not think SpongeBob is of the same metal. SpongeBob says he will never talk. Plankton threatens him with the feather. SpongeBob immediately breaks and says, okay, but he does not know how to get into the safe behind the painting in Mr. Krabs' office that houses the secret formula because Mr. Krabs will not let him near it. Everyone pauses. Plankton says clever and asks if it is behind the painting. Mr. Krabs growls. Plankton asks what he is smelling and if something is burning. SpongeBob sniffs and says it smells like blubber to him. Plankton repeats the word blubber with fear in his voice. Pearl walks into the kitchen calling for her daddy. Plankton screams and tells Mr. Krabs to call off his daughter. Mr. Krabs says she is a big girl and he has no control over what she does. He also says Plankton better watch out because he thinks Pearl is extra hungry today. Plankton backs away from Pearl, telling her to stay back. He says he is aware of what whales do to organisms like him and that he has seen those documentaries. As he backs up, he accidentally goes into the freezer. He exits the freezer and walks out the door telling them not to say it. Pearl says she prefers salad over Plankton anyway. Mr. Krabs chuckles evilly and says who knew Plankton was so afraid of whales. He tells Pearl she saved his business and his formula. He asks her to get them out of the trap. Pearl says mall money. Mr. Krabs agrees and says she is getting more like her old man every day. He gives Pearl $1 from his chest like an ATM. Pearl pulls SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs out of the robotic claw and puts them down. Mr. Krabs asks Pearl to swing by the chum bucket on her way to the mall to give Plankton a scare. Pearl says to double her mall money. Mr. Krabs grunts and tells SpongeBob it is his turn to chip in. SpongeBob hands Pearl dollars, saying she should buy herself something pretty. Pearl looks at the money and says this is not money. SpongeBob says it is even better because this is what Mr. Gotta. Krabs pays him with, showing Mr. Krabs wacky bucks instead of real money. Mr. Krabs tells Pearl he will do her homework for her if she helps. Pearl refuses, saying the chum bucket is totally gross. Mr. Krabs says in that case he is going to need to borrow one of her dresses. Both SpongeBob and Pearl look confused. The scene cuts to the chum bucket where Plankton runs inside. His wife Karen asks how he failed this time. Plankton says Krabs had a whale. Karen asks if he means his big scary teenage daughter with a mocking tone. Plankton says he hears the mocking tone and does not appreciate it. He asks if Karen remembers what happened to his ancestors at the hands of those beasts. The episode shows a flashback of Plankton's family being eaten by a whale. Karen tells him when he needs a break from his delusional paranoia, the trash needs attention because it has ripened. The scene shows Plankton taking out the trash. Mr. Krabs dressed as Pearl emerges from the dumpster saying he is hungry. Plankton screams and runs back inside, barring the door and hiding near the transmutator. He says that should keep her out. Mr. Krabs in the Pearl costume sneaks up behind him, breathing heavily and saying he wants Plankton meat. Plankton screams and runs out of the lab, yelling to Karen that she is here and she got in. Karen asks what he is talking about. Plankton says there is a whale in the laboratory. Karen asks if he is out of his mind. Plankton tells her to see for herself. Karen checks the lab and reports there is no whale in there. Plankton insists he saw a whale right next to the transmutator with her mouth all frothy and her blowhole blowing. Karen says that is enough and she has to get back to more pertinent binary functions. She rolls away. Plankton calls after her, but Karen says in a sing-song voice that she is not listening. The French narrator announces 16 paranoia-filled days later. Karen calls that Plankton's dinner is ready and asks if he can hear her. The scene shows Plankton sitting on his chair with long gray hair, a long beard, long fingernails, and 2 boxes of tissues on his feet as shoes. Plankton says yes, he can hear her, but asks if she can bring the food up because he cannot risk stepping into the light since the whale might see him. He cries. The camera zooms out to show Mr. Krabs in the Pearl costume looking at Plankton through the window and laughing. That night, Plankton is in bed feeling uncomfortable, grunting and shivering. He starts having a nightmare where he is being chased by Pearl and falls into her blowhole, landing in her mouth. He bangs on Pearl's teeth, yelling to get him out. Pearl laughs evilly and flings Plankton into her throat with her tongue. Plankton screams as he falls into her stomach where his ancestors find him. His grandfather says he is glad Plankton could join the rest of the family. Plankton says his grandfather's name in surprise. The grandfather says yes and tells Plankton he is pretty brave standing in that gastric acid. Plankton realizes what he is standing in and screams as his body becomes half burned. Pearl cackles with thunder and lightning striking. Plankton wakes up from the nightmare, screaming that he cannot take it. He cries, saying this is driving him crazy. Mr. Krabs takes off his disguise and laughs sadistically. The next morning shows Plankton lying in the middle of the road crying. He says, what is the point of going on when he will just be tortured for the rest of his life by that whale? He lies down and says that he He is done, and the 4:15 bus should be along any time now. This is the moment that earned this episode its reputation as one of the absolute worst in SpongeBob history. Plankton is attempting to commit suicide by getting run over by a bus because Mr. Krabs tortured him psychologically for 16 straight days. SpongeBob walks up and asks Plankton what he is doing, laying in the middle of the road. Plankton tells him to go away and that he is trying to get run over. He even asks SpongeBob to step on him as hard as he can. SpongeBob says he is sorry, but that flies in the face of his good nature. Plankton tells him to forget it and says he will just wait for the next bus. He tells SpongeBob to go back to the Krusty Krab and enjoy himself. SpongeBob says okay and leaves. The scene cuts to the Krusty Krab in Mr. Krabs' office with the pearl mask on his desk. Mr. Krabs is erasing a picture of Plankton saying goodbye to the Pipsqueak. This line shocked many viewers because it suggests Mr. Krabs flat out wants Plankton to die. SpongeBob enters saying sorry to interrupt his gloating, but he thought it would be pertinent for Mr. Krabs to know that Plankton is laying in the street forlorn. Mr. Krabs gasps and says, "Really?" Then laughs, saying Plankton is a mess. This is the other moment that made fans extremely angry at this episode. SpongeBob just told Mr. Krabs that Plankton is lying in the street trying to kill himself, and Mr. Krabs' response is to laugh about it. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs he knows they are sworn enemies, but putting on a dress to frighten him seems like taking it too far. Mr. Krabs reminds SpongeBob that he disclosed the location of the safe where he keeps the secret formula. SpongeBob says no need to remind him because he broke rule number 2 of the Krusty Krab rulebook about never disclosing the location of the secret formula. He tells Mr. Krabs not to worry because he can fix this. The scene cuts back to Plankton, who angrily asks what it takes to get run over around here. SpongeBob arrives saying hi. Plankton tells him to take a hike. SpongeBob says very quickly he just wanted to tell Plankton that the Krabby Patty's secret formula is not in the safe behind the painting in the Krusty Krab. Plankton says why should he care when all meaning has left his life ever since he has been plagued by that whale. SpongeBob says it is okay because everybody has a secret fear. For instance, he says Mr. Krabs' secret fear is something and whispers in Plankton's ear. Plankton asks, "Really?" SpongeBob says yes, and guess what else? That was Mr. Krabs in a whale suit that Plankton has been scared of. Plankton realizes this entire time it has been Mr. Krabs masquerading as a whale. He gets angry and calls Mr. Krabs a conniving bottom feeder. SpongeBob says luckily Plankton would not have use for such innocuous information. Plankton says of course not. SpongeBob tells him to get back to his self-destructive behavior and thanks him for the talk. Plankton thanks SpongeBob and laughs evilly. The scene transitions to Mr. Krabs putting on the pearl costume, saying he found his second calling. He opens the door saying Plankton is not even a challenge anymore. Plankton asks if that is so. Mr. Krabs sees Plankton and asks if he is back for more. He breathes deeply and says boo. Plankton says Mr. Krabs does not scare him. Mr. Krabs tries to pretend he is Pearl. Plankton says the jig is up because he knows all about the suit and Mr. Krabs' secret fear. Mr. Krabs asks what secret fear. Plankton tells him to see for himself. The robotic arm from earlier squeezes Mr. Krabs. Plankton tells him to enjoy the show. A mime appears. Mr. Krabs says no repeatedly and begs for it to stop. He cries. Plankton laughs evilly, asking if it does not feel so good on the other end of the stick. He says he is loving this. SpongeBob tells Plankton that if he were Plankton, he would not be so smug. Plankton asks, why not? SpongeBob says because a hungry pod of whales just showed up for its early feeding. Plankton gasps. The scene shows whales outside. Plankton screams about not wanting another feeding and begs to get out of there. He removes a nail from the floor and jumps inside the hole. SpongeBob puts a cork in the hole, turns off a projector which makes the whales disappear, and gets Mr. Krabs out of the robot arm. Mr. Krabs says SpongeBob redeemed himself. He tells the mime it really is creeping him out now. The episode ends with the mime still bothering Mr. Krabs. This episode earned a rating of 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb, making it the second lowest rated episode in SpongeBob history. Some sources report it as 3.5 out of 10. The episode aired on the 25th of March 2010 during Season 7 to 4.19 million viewers in the United States. It was written by Casey Alexander, Zeus Service, and Doug Lawrence. The fact that Doug Lawrence, who voices Plankton, was one of the writers who created an episode where his own character attempts suicide shocked many fans. The content creator Phantom Strider ranked this episode as the #1 worst episode of the entire series. WatchMojo also ranked it #1 on their list of worst SpongeBob episodes. The mysterious Mr. Enter ranked it as the #2 worst episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, with only Pet Sitter Pat ranking lower in his view. Fans universally consider it one of the absolute worst episodes ever made, often comparing it directly to A Pal for Gary as equally terrible or even worse. The episode is criticized for featuring suicide themes in a children's cartoon. Plankton literally lies in the middle of the road waiting to be run over by a bus after being psychologically tortured for over 2 weeks. The episode shows him at his absolute lowest point, having lost all will to live. This darkness shocked viewers who expected family-friendly entertainment. Many parents reported feeling uncomfortable watching this episode with their children and having to explain what Plankton was trying to do. Even members of the cast and crew expressed discomfort with this episode. Clancy Brown, who voices Mr. Krabs, reportedly felt uncomfortable when recording his lines for this episode. The fact that someone as experienced and professional as Clancy Brown felt disturbed by the material shows how extreme the content became. When the voice actor playing a character feels wrong about the things his character is saying and doing, that indicates a serious problem with the script. The most controversial moment is when SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs that Plankton is lying in the street forlorn, and Mr. Krabs responds by gasping, then laughing, and saying Plankton is a mess. Mr. Krabs laughs at the fact that his business rival has been driven to attempt suicide. This crosses a line that the show had never approached before. Throughout the entire series' history, even when Mr. Krabs and Plankton fought as enemies, there was always an underlying sense that they had known each other since childhood and shared history. The episode Friend or Foe from earlier seasons showed them as childhood friends before they became rivals. But this episode ignores all of that history and shows Mr. Krabs actively trying to destroy Plankton mentally and emotionally, then laughing when it works. Another shocking detail is Mr. Krabs erasing a picture of Plankton in his office and saying goodbye Pipsqueak. Combined with the context of Plankton lying in the road waiting to die, this suggests Mr. Krabs literally wants Plankton dead. He is not just trying to protect his formula or keep Plankton away from his restaurant. He is actively hoping Plankton will successfully kill himself. This level of cruelty from a main character in a children's show disturbed countless viewers. The episode shows Mr. Krabs stalking Plankton for 16 consecutive days. He does not just scare Plankton away from the Krusty Krab, he follows Plankton to his own home and business. He appears outside Plankton's windows. He sneaks into the chum bucket to terrorize Plankton in his own laboratory. This goes far beyond defending his business. This is harassment and psychological torture. Plankton becomes unable to function. He grows long hair, a long beard, and long fingernails. He wears tissue boxes on his feet as shoes. He refuses to go outside or even step into the light because he is so terrified. This shows clear signs of severe mental breakdown. The nightmare sequence adds another disturbing element. The episode shows Plankton having a graphic nightmare where he gets swallowed by a whale and lands in her stomach with his dead ancestors. His grandfather tells him he is brave, standing in gastric acid, then Plankton's body becomes half burned and he screams. The imagery of Plankton's body being dissolved by stomach acid while his deceased family members watch is extremely dark content for a show aimed at children. The nightmare ends with Pearl cackling while thunder and lightning strike, looking truly evil rather than like the innocent teenage girl character she normally is. When Plankton finally gets his revenge by using a mime to scare Mr. Krabs the same way Mr. Krabs scared him, the episode portrays this as wrong. Plankton laughs and asks if it does not feel good on the other end of the stick, but SpongeBob immediately intervenes to stop Plankton from getting any satisfaction from his revenge. SpongeBob scares Plankton away with holographic whales. This means Plankton went through 16 days of psychological torture, attempted suicide, finally learned the truth, finally got a chance to pay Mr. Krabs back for what he did, and then lost even that small victory. The episode refuses to let Plankton have any win whatsoever. The ending shows Mr. Krabs successfully avoiding any consequences for his actions. SpongeBob tells him he redeemed himself, even though SpongeBob is the one who told Plankton about the disguise in the first place. Mr. Krabs does not apologize. He does not feel bad about what he did. He does not learn anything. The mime continues to bother him slightly, but this is played as a light joke rather than as serious karma for his cruelty. The episode seems to suggest that driving someone to attempt suicide is acceptable as long as you are protecting your business interests. Many reviewers pointed out the hypocrisy of the episode's moral framework. When Mr. Krabs tortures Plankton with his phobia for 16 days straight until Plankton wants to die, the episode presents this as clever and funny. But when Plankton tries to get revenge using the exact same tactic against Mr. Krabs, the episode presents this as villainous behavior that must be stopped. The show cannot have it both ways. Either using someone's phobia against them is wrong or it is acceptable. The episode wants viewers to cheer when Mr. Krabs does it but condemn Plankton for doing the exact same thing. The episode became so notorious that it inspired a creepypasta story. The original episode title was supposedly Plankton Got Served before being changed to one-course meal. The creepypasta imagines an alternate version where Plankton actually does get run over by the bus and wakes up in a horrific world full of whales. The fact that the episode was dark enough to inspire horror stories shows how far it had strayed from normal SpongeBob content. The mysterious Mr. Enter's review of this episode in 2013 significantly amplified the hatred for it. Before his review, some fans disliked the episode, but it was not universally condemned. After his detailed criticism pointing out all the problems with the suicide themes and character assassination, the episode became recognized as one of the worst ever made. His review helped fans articulate exactly why the episode felt so wrong. Some fans who initially defended the episode changed their minds after seeing the issues broken down point by point. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the Splinter. The episode starts at the Krusty Krab, where SpongeBob counts down the seconds until opening time. Mr. Krabs prepares to unlock the door, and SpongeBob asks if he can turn the sign from closed to open. Mr. Krabs agrees, and SpongeBob celebrates by turning the sign and laughing. Squidward responds weakly without enthusiasm. SpongeBob prepares for the workday by checking his ingredients. He confirms he has freshness, buns, and fresh patties. He throws the buns on the table with his butt and uses his spatula to grab frozen patties from the freezer. He squeezes his Krusty Krab employee hat out of his head and makes a joke about the heat from the grill burning off his eyelashes. SpongeBob takes an order off the line that reads 2 Krabby Patties, with a postscript saying SpongeBob is an idiot, signed with love from Squidward. SpongeBob responds sweetly, saying he loves Squidward too. He twirls his spatula, but it gets stuck on the ceiling. He tries jumping to reach it, but cannot. The episode shows him stacking a pile of items to climb up and reach the spatula. As he climbs, jars of tartar sauce break, causing swords and scissors to fall. SpongeBob reaches the ceiling and grabs the spatula by putting his hands on his hips, though he does not realize he has already grabbed it. He comments that the spatula is stuck pretty good and puts it back into the ceiling. He finally gets it out, but loses his balance and falls toward the pile of swords and scissors below. SpongeBob screams and says he guesses this is it. The spatula saves him by getting stuck on a single sword. It slides off the sword and SpongeBob lands safely on the ground. He thanks the spatula for saving him. Then he slips on some spilled tartar sauce. The episode shows his finger running down onto the floor in slow motion where it lands directly on a splinter. SpongeBob says, "Hey, a splinter," and tells it that it has been nice knowing it, but it has to go now. He tries to pull it out, but cannot. He says it kind of hurts. He tries again, saying it really hurts. He screams about how painful it is. He tries using the spatula to remove it, but fails. After multiple attempts, he tells the splinter it is tough, smart, and charming, but still no match for him. He tries to distract the splinter by pointing at a fake bald eagle with a mustache, then attempts to pull it off with his teeth. The episode shows his face skin ripping off, revealing his skeleton underneath. SpongeBob gives up and says fine, stay, but he hopes the splinter likes making Krabby Patties. A customer named Nat talks to Squidward saying he ordered a couple Krabby Patties a while ago and is wondering when they will be ready. Squidward presses his tentacle against Nat's face and laughs, saying it looks like he is crushing his face. Another customer named Peterson asks if the patties will be ready soon. Squidward tells him not to move too much because it ruins the effect. SpongeBob gets a crumpled note thrown at him. He tries to hold the spatula, but the splinter prevents him, and he says ow repeatedly. He says the splinter is making this difficult, but luckily he is ambidextrous. He presses a button on the spatula that releases a string, and he ties the spatula to his nose. He uses the nose-mounted spatula to put 2 patties on the grill and flip them. He picks up cheese, tomatoes, and lettuce with his 3 good fingers and throws them in the air. He holds up a plate with a patty on a bun and the toppings fall onto it. He places the other bun on top with his pinky and calls it perfection. SpongeBob puts the Krabby Patties on the order window and rings the service bell 4 times. Before he can ring it a 5th time, Squidward puts his hand on the bell, saying he hears him. SpongeBob pops his head out the order window, causing his spatula to go into Squidward's eyes. He tells Squidward the 2 Krabby Patties are ready. Squidward growls and goes into the kitchen. He asks SpongeBob a question in a calm, relaxed voice while smiling. He points to the spatula tied to SpongeBob's nose, asking what that is. SpongeBob asks what is what. Squidward flicks the spatula. They go back and forth with SpongeBob, pretending not to understand what Squidward is asking about. Finally, Squidward yells, asking about the spatula tied to his nose. SpongeBob laughs and explains the whole story. He tells how the spatula got stuck on the ceiling, how he stacked stuff to reach it, how he fell, how he was saved, then how he tripped and got the splinter. He asks if Squidward was listening at all and shows him the splinter. As SpongeBob shows the splinter up close, some pus falls from it directly into Squidward's left eye. SpongeBob explains that since he could not hold the spatula with his hand, he used his nose instead. He asks if that makes sense now. Squidward responds sarcastically saying, "Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense," calling SpongeBob a half-wit who injured himself at work being a nitwit. SpongeBob laughs and calls it a good one from Squidward. Squidward grumbles about the injury and then stops to get an idea. He asks SpongeBob if he said he got the splinter injury at work. SpongeBob confirms yes. Squidward says that is not good. SpongeBob agrees, saying it hurts so bad. Squidward says when Mr. Krabs finds out, "Oh man." SpongeBob asks finds out what. Squidward explains that Mr. Krabs will find out about this injury. SpongeBob asks if he means the splinter. Squidward says, "Mr. Krabs will be forced to send SpongeBob home." SpongeBob stutters in fear at the word home, but insists he is fine. Squidward takes SpongeBob's Krusty Krab employee hat and spatula. SpongeBob asks why and says he is fine. Squidward says it was a good shift while it lasted and walks into the bathroom with SpongeBob following. Both of them walk into a bathroom stall, and Squidward flushes SpongeBob's hat and spatula down the toilet. SpongeBob asks what he is doing. Squidward says he knows it is hard to say goodbye. SpongeBob insists he is fine and starts tap dancing to prove nothing is wrong. He takes toilet paper and wraps it around his splinter to hide it, but the toilet paper immediately falls off. Squidward says he believes SpongeBob, but unfortunately the rules clearly state that SpongeBob must be sent home. SpongeBob begs Squidward not to let this happen and cries while clinging to him. Squidward says sorry, the rules are the rules. He walks into the kitchen while SpongeBob continues crying and clinging to him. Squidward smiles and says it will be pretty quiet with Mr. Krabs sending SpongeBob home early, and he hopes they will make it through the rest of the day without him. SpongeBob breathes deeply and begs Squidward not to tell Mr. Krabs. Squidward says, "What? Him? Tell Mr. Krabs," and says no repeatedly. SpongeBob feels relieved. Squidward then says, "Well, maybe." SpongeBob screams and holds his heart that is emitting from his chest. Squidward says he does not have to tell Mr. Krabs. SpongeBob is relieved again. Then Squidward leans close to his ear and says, "Because he already knows." SpongeBob's eyes open wide and his nose deflates like a balloon. Squidward grabs 2 pillows and places them over his ears. SpongeBob screams so loudly that the sound waves blow Squidward out the front door. Squidward comes back in through the back door. SpongeBob asks if Mr. Krabs really knows. Squidward says, "Oh yeah," explaining that Mr. Krabs has preternatural instincts about situations like this, and when something is amiss in his restaurant, he can smell it. SpongeBob and Squidward look out the order window at Mr. Krabs, who is sniffing around. Mr. Krabs smells a customer's wallet and 2 quarters get stuck in his nostrils. He tells the customer that these quarters smell sad and asks if the customer is planning to get a refill with them. The customer says no and leaves. SpongeBob gasps and tells Squidward he needs help. The scene cuts to SpongeBob dialing a phone number. He says, "Please pick up," repeatedly. Patrick answers but does not say anything. SpongeBob taps his foot while waiting and finally says Patrick's name. Patrick responds, "Yeah." SpongeBob sighs with relief and says, "Thank goodness Patrick is there." He explains he got a splinter on his thumb. Patrick says he sees and that he is pretty booked today, but he thinks he can fit SpongeBob in. SpongeBob opens the back door and sees Patrick sitting in the dumpster with the phone. SpongeBob thanks him. Patrick hangs up and goes into the garbage, then comes back up wearing a doctor outfit. Patrick puts on gloves and says, "SpongeBob called the right person." He grabs SpongeBob's leg and inspects it, saying, "Interesting." He sniffs the leg. SpongeBob tries to tell Patrick something. Patrick puts SpongeBob's foot in his mouth and says, "Interesting" again. SpongeBob says Patrick's name while Patrick licks his foot, gurgles, and swishes it around like mouthwash. SpongeBob says this is not helping. Patrick pulls the foot out of his mouth and says sorry, adding that he did not realize SpongeBob was a doctor. SpongeBob says he is not a doctor. Patrick says, but he is sure SpongeBob can figure it out with his 12 years of med school. SpongeBob points out that Patrick did not go to med school. Patrick responds, "So what?" SpongeBob apologizes and says he really needs Patrick's help. Patrick says, "Oh no, it looks like SpongeBob has things under control." SpongeBob cries, saying he does not want to go home early. Patrick says okay, but they play by his rules. SpongeBob smiles and nods. Patrick inspects the splinter with a magnifying glass and says, "Well, here is the problem." He tells SpongeBob not to worry because they are going to make it go away. He takes out a huge wooden spike and a hammer. SpongeBob feels relieved and thanks Patrick, calling him a lifesaver. Patrick places the spike on top of the splinter and lines up the hammer. He slams the hammer down, driving the splinter further into SpongeBob's thumb. SpongeBob yells "ow" as his thumb swells up horrifically and grows 10 times in size. Patrick looks at the massive swollen thumb and says there appears to be a little bit of swelling. He picks up a lump of trash and says this garbage compress should help the swelling go down. He drops the garbage on the swollen thumb. The garbage slides off and the area where the splinter is inserted fizzes with sickly green ooze. SpongeBob's thumb turns dark purple. Patrick says that does not look good. His watch beeps and he says his shift is over. He takes off the outfit and puts his hat on. He tells SpongeBob to call him in the morning if he can still dial the phone. Patrick walks away. SpongeBob walks back inside and notices Mr. Krabs and Squidward are standing there. He gasps. Mr. Krabs asks, "What is that?" SpongeBob asks, "What is what?" Mr. Krabs asks, "What is behind his back?" SpongeBob pulls his splinter out from behind his back, but it is covered by his Krusty Krab employee hat. Mr. Krabs tells him to put his hat on and show some company pride. SpongeBob puts the hat on his head. Mr. Krabs asks if SpongeBob has always had 3 legs. SpongeBob has a sock and shoe covering his splintered thumb to make it look like a 3rd leg. He answers yes. Mr. Krabs finds this interesting. Then he asks about a splinter that Squidward has been telling him all about. SpongeBob screams. Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob to let him see it. SpongeBob whimpers. Mr. Krabs says, "Come on, it is just a little splinter. How bad could it be?" SpongeBob reveals his massive swollen thumb, which has a pale green fizz around the center. His thumb is now red instead of purple. Mr. Krabs gags and says, "Oh, merciful Neptune." Squidward moans and faints. Mr. Krabs says, "Okay, no problem," twice. He easily picks out the splinter with his claw. There is a brief pause, and the tip of SpongeBob's thumb pops and shoots out confetti. Mr. Krabs starts to say problem solved, but then green pus shoots out of SpongeBob's thumb onto Mr. Krabs' face. He takes out an umbrella as the pus spray dies down. The episode shows a close-up of SpongeBob's free hand bending his splinter-free thumb. Mr. Krabs says, "Whoo!" For a second there, he thought he was going to have to pay SpongeBob workman's compensation. SpongeBob asks what workers' compensation is. Mr. Krabs explains it means getting paid for sitting at home. Squidward's eyes shoot open. He gets up and says he can get paid while at home. Mr. Krabs says, "Yeah, what does Squidward think compensation stands for?" Squidward grabs the cash register and slowly smashes it onto his head 2 times, groaning in pain. Mr. Krabs says Squidward's name. Squidward smashes the register on his head 2 more times, then throws it into the air and gets crushed by it. He asks if he can get his compensation now. Mr. Krabs says no, sorry, because Squidward's shift ended over 2 minutes ago. Squidward groans and the episode ends. This episode earned a rating of 4 out of 10 on IMDb. On SpongeBuddy Mania, the episode received a rating of 2.67 out of 10 based on 143 votes. The episode aired on the 2nd of June 2008 during Season 6 to 3.77 million viewers in the United States. It was written by Sean Sharmatz, and this was his first episode writing for the series. Tom Kenny, the voice actor who plays SpongeBob, stated that this is his least favorite SpongeBob episode. This is a significant statement because Tom Kenny has been voicing the character since the show began in 1999 and has recorded lines for hundreds of episodes. When the main character's voice actor publicly states an episode is his least favorite, it indicates serious problems with the content. The episode received widespread criticism for its excessive use of gross-out humor. The most infamous scene is shown in slow motion, where SpongeBob slips on tartar sauce and his finger runs down onto the floor, landing directly on a splinter that penetrates his thumb. The episode shows the splinter going into his skin with uncomfortable detail. Later scenes show the splinter area becoming infected, swollen, and oozing. The visual design of the infected thumb with green pus and dark discoloration disturbed many viewers who felt this level of grotesque imagery was inappropriate for a children's cartoon. The scene where SpongeBob tries to remove the splinter with his teeth particularly shocked viewers. The episode shows his face skin ripping off to reveal his skeleton underneath. This is an extremely graphic image for a show aimed at children. While SpongeBob has used cartoon violence before, showing actual skeletal structure after skin removal crosses a line that previous episodes had not approached. The image is designed to make viewers uncomfortable rather than to entertain them with clever humor. Patrick's treatment of SpongeBob earned significant criticism. When SpongeBob calls Patrick for help with his medical problem, Patrick arrives wearing a doctor outfit but provides no actual help. Instead, Patrick puts SpongeBob's foot in his mouth, licks it, and swishes it around like mouthwash for an extended period. This scene serves no purpose except to fill time with uncomfortable imagery. When Patrick finally looks at the actual splinter, His solution is to hammer it deeper into SpongeBob's thumb with a wooden spike. This makes the injury dramatically worse. The thumb swells to 10 times its normal size. Then Patrick drops garbage on the infected area, causing it to fizz with green ooze and turn purple. Patrick looks at the horrific result and simply says his shift is over before walking away. This marks a significant change in Patrick's character. In earlier episodes like Suds, where Patrick also pretends to be a doctor, Patrick acts out of genuine desire to help SpongeBob, even though his methods are misguided. In that episode, Patrick clearly cares about his friend and tries his best despite lacking medical knowledge. But in the Splinter, Patrick acts arrogant and abusive towards SpongeBob. He gets angry when SpongeBob tries to correct him. He deliberately makes the injury worse. He abandons SpongeBob after causing severe damage. The episode shows Patrick caring more about pretending to be important than about helping his supposed best friend. Squidward's behavior throughout the episode also drew criticism. When SpongeBob clearly has a painful injury, Squidward immediately sees this as an opportunity to get SpongeBob sent home from work. Squidward flushes SpongeBob's hat and spatula down the toilet. He deliberately terrorizes SpongeBob by making him think he will definitely be sent home. He watches SpongeBob cry and hyperventilate without showing any concern. He tells Mr. Krabs about the injury specifically to get SpongeBob in trouble. While Squidward has always been portrayed as annoyed by SpongeBob, this episode shows him being actively cruel to someone who is injured and afraid. The climactic scene where Mr. Krabs removes the splinter is remembered as one of the most disgusting moments in SpongeBob history. First, the thumb pops and shoots out confetti, creating a brief moment of relief. Then green pus explodes out of SpongeBob's thumb directly onto Mr. Krabs' face in a powerful spray. The pus continues shooting for several seconds while Mr. Krabs opens an umbrella to protect himself. The sound effects and visual design of this scene were specifically created to make viewers feel nauseated. Many viewers reported feeling physically sick while watching this moment. The episode fails to provide any meaningful humor to balance the gross-out content. Earlier SpongeBob episodes that used gross-out elements like the toenail scene in House Fancy or various moments in Ren and Stimpy-style episodes at least included clever jokes and character moments to make the experience enjoyable, but the Splinter focuses almost entirely on making viewers uncomfortable. The plot is extremely simple. SpongeBob gets a splinter, tries to hide it, it gets worse, then it gets removed. There are no interesting character interactions, no clever wordplay, no creative visual gags beyond the gross imagery itself. The episode essentially tortures its main character for 11 minutes. SpongeBob spends the entire episode in pain and fear. He is injured, then he is threatened with being sent home, then his friend makes the injury much worse, then he is humiliated in front of his boss. There is no moment where SpongeBob succeeds at anything or experiences any happiness. The episode ends with SpongeBob having endured suffering without learning anything or growing as a character. This type of character torture became a pattern in Season 6 that upset many longtime viewers. The premise itself has logical problems that viewers pointed out. SpongeBob has been shown in multiple previous episodes to be able to detach and regenerate his body parts. He can remove his arms and grow them back. When he loses limbs, they grow back quickly. So, the entire conflict of the episode makes no sense because SpongeBob could simply remove the arm with the splinter and regenerate a new arm without the splinter. The episode ignores established rules about how SpongeBob's body works in order to force him through an uncomfortable situation. The pacing of the episode also received criticism. The splinter injury happens early in the episode, but then the actual plot takes a long time to develop. There are extended scenes of Patrick examining the wrong body part and putting SpongeBob's foot in his mouth that serve no narrative purpose. These scenes exist only to fill the 11-minute runtime with uncomfortable content. The episode feels padded with filler because the basic story of getting and removing a splinter does not provide enough material for a full episode. The mysterious Mr. Enter, a popular animation reviewer on YouTube, called this episode an animated atrocity. His reviews had significant influence on how viewers perceived various SpongeBob episodes. After his detailed criticisms of the splinter, pointing out all the problems with the gross-out humor and character behavior, many viewers who had initially tolerated the episode began to view it more negatively. His review helped articulate why the episode felt wrong to so many viewers. The episode represents a turning point in the series where gross-out humor began to overshadow the clever writing and character development that made early SpongeBob successful. Season 6 Inches General received criticism for declining quality, and the splinter is frequently cited as one of the season's worst offerings. The episode seems designed more to shock and disgust viewers than to entertain them with creative comedy. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Stuck in the Ringer. The episode starts with SpongeBob taking a morning shower and singing about getting clean. He washes himself thoroughly, including sticking a bar of soap through his ear to wash his brain. His brain becomes clean and smiles. SpongeBob gets out of the shower and slips through his wringer to dry himself off. He says what would he do without his wringer? Otherwise he would be all wet. He laughs and gets dressed. He announces he is ready to go to work. Then he slips on soap and screams before getting up off the ground. He tells himself he has to be more careful. Another spare bar of soap falls on the floor. SpongeBob notices the soap and says he saw it, and it will not fool him this time. The soap frowns. Then SpongeBob steps on a rubber ducky. He jumps back onto the soap, which causes him to slip into his wringer and get stuck. He tries to escape. He uses his tongue and tries to twist the handle on the wringer, but the handle breaks off. He says this is not going well, and sighs. Patrick comes in looking for his rubber ducky. SpongeBob asks if that is it. Patrick finds his ducky and celebrates, making quacking sounds while laughing. SpongeBob says he hates to interrupt the reunion, but he kind of needs help. Patrick asks what SpongeBob needs. SpongeBob says, well, he is a little stuck. Patrick says stuck and that he can help with that. He reaches for a bottle marked Forever Glue and applies it to the wringer. He tells SpongeBob there he goes. Now he is stuck forever. SpongeBob thanks Patrick, then realizes what he said. He repeats the word forever with fear. When the glue starts to dry, he tries to escape, but it is too late. The glue has dried and he is unable to get himself free. SpongeBob tells Patrick he wanted to get unstuck, not more stuck. He asks how he is going to get to work when he is stuck forever. He screams that he must get out of the wringer. He uses his eyes, nose, and teeth to try to pull himself out, but gets pulled back in and screams. Patrick breaks the wringer off the ground. He asks if that is better. SpongeBob says no, Patrick, it is not, and asks how he is supposed to flip patties like this. Patrick says that is quitter talk and asks if SpongeBob is a quitter. SpongeBob says no. Patrick asks if SpongeBob is going to let this wringer get between him and his passion. A flag with a Krabby Patty on it appears behind them. Patrick describes the tomatoes, onions, and asks if SpongeBob will let it stop him. SpongeBob says no. He will not let it get between him and those crisp onions, sweet tomatoes, fresh lettuce, a flame-broiled patty, a warm bun sprinkled with sesame seeds, served with a smile that says he cares. He announces he is ready. Patrick says that is the spirit. SpongeBob celebrates but crashes into the door and falls down the stairs. He yells to Patrick not to worry because his spirits are still high. The scene cuts to the Krusty Krab where SpongeBob uses a spatula attached to the wringer and kicks the box of toppings to land on the patty. He says hello to the perfectly made Krabby Patty and announces the order is up. Squidward says it is about time. He notices SpongeBob, who has put a bottle of mustard in one of his holes. Squidward laughs at him and asks where he got the outfit, the hardware store. He laughs and repeats hardware store. SpongeBob laughs and says no, from his bathroom. Squidward says he must say it really completes his imbecile look. He gives himself a thumbs up and winks. SpongeBob thanks him and returns the thumbs up. He accidentally squirts mustard into Squidward's eyes, causing him to scream in pain. His eyes shrivel off and fall onto a Krabby Patty. This scene shocked many viewers because it shows Squidward's actual eyes falling out of his head and landing in food, which is extremely graphic for a children's cartoon. SpongeBob gasps and says Squidward's name. Squidward falls in the register boat. SpongeBob jumps on Squidward's stomach and asks if he is okay. Squidward tells him to please just get away from him. A customer asks if he can have a refill on his soda. SpongeBob says a refill and hits the cash register, which falls on the customer's foot. The customer yells about his foot hurting. He bumps into a table and yells about his back. He bumps into the table again and yells about his face. SpongeBob gasps and says not to worry because he is coming. He hits the cash register, which opens and spews money everywhere. He screams and smashes into a pole. He tells everyone not to worry, he is okay, then screams after seeing customers taking the money. He yells for them not to touch Mr. Krabs' money. Mr. Krabs comes out of his office yelling about his money. He asks what the customers think they are doing. He takes the money back from customers, saying it is not theirs and thank you very much. He says when he gets his hands on that boy, SpongeBob struggles to get out of the pole, blasts out, screams, and crashes into Mr. Krabs and the other customers. SpongeBob says he will help. Mr. Krabs shouts, asking help and saying he thinks SpongeBob has helped quite enough today. He shows the destroyed restaurant and takes SpongeBob outside. He tells SpongeBob not to even think about coming back until that destructive device is gone. He throws SpongeBob out of the Krusty Krab. Patrick walks up asking how work was. SpongeBob says an absolute disaster. He cannot do anything without this stupid wringer getting in the way. He tells Patrick he is nothing more than a bike rack, a sad little bike rack. A kid chains his bike to the wringer. SpongeBob starts crying. Patrick tells him not to cry because crying never solves anything. He uses a hairdryer to dry SpongeBob's teary eyes. Patrick says he knows what always makes SpongeBob feel better. The scene cuts to Super Weenie Hut Jr.'s. SpongeBob says Patrick was right because ice cream always makes him feel better. Patrick tells him to dig in. SpongeBob tries to eat ice cream but cannot because his hands are stuck in the wringer. He uses his tongue but cannot swallow it. He says he cannot even eat ice cream now because this dumb wringer is in the way. Patrick says that is a bummer and suggests they forget this place and go to the carnival because that is the funniest spot in the ocean. He eats SpongeBob's ice cream as they leave. The scene cuts to the carnival. Patrick points out the ball toss. The vendor tells folks to step right up, toss a ball, hit the cans, and win a stuffed seahorse. Patrick says they want to play. The vendor hands Patrick some balls. Patrick throws a ball and knocks down all the cans. He celebrates and tells SpongeBob to try. SpongeBob throws the ball as best he can. It bounces back and hits him in the face, giving him a nasty black eye. Patrick points out spinning steering wheels and says they have to do that. SpongeBob says he does not know because he has too much eye pain. Patrick asks how many times does the carnival come to town. They walk away revealing a sign that says Carnival Always Here. They get into one of the seats in the ride. Patrick asks if SpongeBob is ready. SpongeBob struggles to reach the handle, but then it is too late. The ride already starts and he is flung out of the ride. Patrick says SpongeBob's name. SpongeBob flies through the air asking why. The scene cuts to later in the day at the carnival. Patrick asks if SpongeBob wants some of his cotton candy. He says they gave it to him when he won the dart tournament. He shows off his ribbon pin. SpongeBob says, that is nice, but he does not want any cotton candy. Patrick says to have some because it will make him feel better. SpongeBob's patience has run out and he becomes annoyed. He says loudly that he does not want any and turns, knocking the cotton candy onto the ground. Patrick says SpongeBob ruined his cotton candy. SpongeBob responds with rage, saying good, maybe now Patrick knows how he feels about Patrick ruining his life. The ball toss vendor yells to check out the public fight. Another vendor says working at the carnival sure has its perks. A crowd gathers around SpongeBob and Patrick. SpongeBob says he has never felt so ashamed. Patrick asks what he means. SpongeBob says if it was not for Patrick's forever glue, he would not be stuck in this thing. Patrick says, but he was only trying to help. SpongeBob berates Patrick and shouts very furiously, asking help and saying he thinks Patrick has helped quite enough today. Patrick says, okay, if that is how SpongeBob feels. His eyes tear up and he says he will not help SpongeBob anymore. Patrick runs off crying hysterically. The crowd forms a silent, angry mob facing SpongeBob. SpongeBob laughs nervously and says there is a lot of drama with that one. A character named Sandals tells SpongeBob that his body is not the problem, it is his heart. Inside SpongeBob's body, his heart starts to groan, sadly. Sandals says SpongeBob deserves what he has gotten and tells everyone to come on, they are leaving. The crowd leaves while Sandals says some people are just born mean. SpongeBob frowns in shame. This is the moment that earned the episode its terrible reputation. SpongeBob has been suffering all day because Patrick permanently glued him into a wringer. He finally reaches his breaking point and tells Patrick the truth about how Patrick ruined his life. Instead of the crowd understanding SpongeBob's legitimate frustration after watching him get injured repeatedly, they blame SpongeBob. They tell him he has no heart. They tell him he deserves to be trapped. They tell him he was born mean. The crowd witnessed everything that happened to SpongeBob, including getting a black eye and being flung from a ride. Yet they side with Patrick, who caused all the problems in the first place. The scene cuts to Patrick's rock. Patrick is brushing his teeth. He says to forget SpongeBob, he does not need him. He brushes his armpit, then his belly button, then puts the toothbrush back in his mouth. He says he can do whatever he wants. He eats the toothbrush and sighs. He gets off his rock and says he does not need SpongeBob. He looks at SpongeBob's house and almost calls for him but stops himself. He says to fight it, he is not SpongeBob's friend anymore. He says he has to keep himself occupied so he does not think about SpongeBob, then stops and covers his mouth. He says he is not even going to say his name. He asks what to do. He decides to have a staring contest. He stares off into space, then blinks. A tumbleweed rolls by. He says, oh fiddlesticks, because that game is too hard. A thought bubble version of Patrick appears saying maybe if SpongeBob was here he could give pointers. Patrick asks who asked him and claps the thought bubble away. He says forget it and decides to play fetch. He throws a stick which lands on SpongeBob's doorstep. He looks for it, saying where is it? He finds it and pauses. He puts his ear to SpongeBob's door, asking if SpongeBob is okay. He says what does he care because he is no longer supposed to help. He walks away but then runs back yelling buddy. He throws the door off while hinging and grunting. He calls SpongeBob's name. SpongeBob has stubble and is sitting in the darkened living room. Patrick asks what SpongeBob is watching. SpongeBob says in a trance that it is his favorite show. The screen cuts to static on the television. The television then dies. SpongeBob laughs slightly crazed and says he loves that part. Patrick tells SpongeBob to snap out of it because it is him, his best friend Patrick. SpongeBob says, "What is that?" He cannot hear Patrick with all the lonely voices in his head. Patrick says, "Oh man, SpongeBob is too far gone." SpongeBob says not fit to live in society. Patrick cries saying this is all his fault. He holds up his forever glue saying it is him and his dumb ideas. He says he is so sorry. A tear falls from his eye and runs down SpongeBob's arm. It lands on the dried glue on the ringer. The tear melts the glue and SpongeBob is able to pull his arm out. SpongeBob yells that Patrick's tears are melting the glue. He tells Patrick to keep crying. He says he will do the same and maybe he can slip out of this thing. Both start crying and all the glue melts off. SpongeBob shakes and pulls himself out of the ringer. He says, "Look, it worked." SpongeBob and Patrick celebrate. SpongeBob looks at the viewers and says he guesses crying does solve your problems after all. He tells Patrick to come here. SpongeBob and Patrick hug. The ringer falls down, trapping both SpongeBob and Patrick in it. Patrick says, well, at least they are together and asks if he should get the glue. The episode ends. This episode earned a rating of 4.2 out of 10 on IMDb. The episode aired on the 19th of July, 2009 during Season 7 to 5.37 million viewers in the United States. It was written by Casey Alexander, Zeus Servas, and Sean Sharmitz. The episode received widespread criticism from viewers who felt it was mean-spirited and depressing rather than entertaining. The ending moral where SpongeBob says crying does solve your problems after all shocked many viewers. This message contradicts what parents teach children about problem solving. The show seems to present this as a sincere lesson rather than as a joke. SpongeBob looks directly at the camera when delivering this line, as if breaking the fourth wall to speak to the audience. This makes it appear that the show genuinely wants children to believe that crying is an effective solution to problems. Many parents expressed concern about this message being presented to young viewers who might take it literally. The setup for the entire episode received criticism for being contrived and unrealistic. SpongeBob slips on soap, steps on a rubber duck, slips again, and rockets around his bathroom before getting stuck in the ringer. Then Patrick walks in at the exact moment to make everything worse. The whole scenario feels artificially constructed, specifically to torture SpongeBob rather than arising naturally from character decisions or realistic situations. Patrick's characterization in this episode particularly upset viewers. In earlier seasons, Patrick makes mistakes because he genuinely wants to help his friends despite lacking intelligence. But in this episode, Patrick's actions cross from innocent stupidity into harmful negligence. When SpongeBob explicitly says he is stuck and needs help getting unstuck, Patrick responds by permanently gluing him in place. Patrick reads the label that says Forever Glue and still applies it. He cheerfully tells SpongeBob now he is stuck forever, as if this is a good thing. This goes beyond being unintelligent into being deliberately obtuse. Throughout the carnival sequence, Patrick enjoys himself while SpongeBob suffers repeatedly. SpongeBob gets a black eye from a ball bouncing back into his face. Patrick sees this happen and his only response is to excitedly point out another attraction. SpongeBob explicitly says he has too much eye pain, but Patrick ignores him and insists they go on the ride anyway. SpongeBob gets flung from the ride and flies through the air screaming. Patrick continues having fun without showing any concern for his supposed best friend's injuries. He wins prizes and eats cotton candy while SpongeBob can barely function. The episode shows SpongeBob being unable to eat ice cream because the ringer blocks his ability to swallow. This creates an uncomfortable visual of SpongeBob struggling with a basic bodily function. Combined with his inability to do his job, his inability to enjoy activities, his physical injuries, and the emotional abuse from the townspeople, the episode becomes relentlessly depressing. Viewers expect SpongeBob episodes to be fun and entertaining, but this episode makes viewers feel bad for the main character without providing any comedic relief to balance the suffering. Mr. Krabs' behavior also drew criticism. When SpongeBob accidentally causes damage at the Krusty Krab while stuck in the ringer, Mr. Krabs immediately throws him out and tells him not to come back until the destructive device is gone. Mr. Krabs shows no concern for why SpongeBob is stuck or how he might help. He does not ask what happened or show any care for his employees' well-being. He only cares that the restaurant got damaged. This fits a pattern in Season 7, where Mr. Krabs became more one-dimensionally greedy and less caring about the people around him. The scene where Squidward's eyes melt off after being hit with mustard particularly disturbed viewers. The episode shows his actual eyeballs shriveling up and falling out of his head onto a Krabby Patty. This is graphic body horror that feels out of place in a children's cartoon. While SpongeBob has used cartoonish violence before, showing actual organ damage with detailed visuals crosses a line. The image of eyeballs landing in food that someone might eat adds an extra layer of grossness that serves no comedic purpose. The townspeople's cruelty towards SpongeBob represents one of the most frustrating elements of the episode. They witnessed SpongeBob's suffering throughout the carnival. They saw him get injured multiple times. They heard him explain that Patrick glued him into the ringer. Despite having full context about the situation, they choose to blame SpongeBob for finally expressing his legitimate anger. Sandals tells SpongeBob that his body is not the problem, it is his heart, and that SpongeBob deserves what happened to him. He calls SpongeBob born mean. These are devastating statements to direct at someone who has been tortured all day through no fault of his own. The crowd's reaction makes no logical sense. If they genuinely believed SpongeBob was bullying Patrick, they could have intervened to stop the argument or tried to mediate. Instead, they form a silent, angry mob, deliver cruel judgments, and abandon SpongeBob to depression. Their behavior serves only to make SpongeBob feel worse and provides no constructive resolution to the conflict. The episode seems to punish SpongeBob for standing up for himself after suffering abuse. The ending where both SpongeBob and Patrick get stuck in the ringer again undermines any sense of resolution. SpongeBob just escaped from being trapped. He and Patrick just reconciled. Then immediately they get stuck again, and Patrick asks if he should get the glue. This implies Patrick learned nothing from the experience. The episode spent 11 minutes showing how terrible it is to be stuck in the ringer, then ends by putting both characters back in that same situation. This creates a sense of futility where nothing the characters experienced mattered. The episode also fails to address logical solutions that SpongeBob could have tried. In previous episodes, SpongeBob has been shown to be able to detach his limbs and regrow them. He could have theoretically removed his arms and grown new ones without the ringer attached. Or he could have called a doctor or professional to help remove the ringer safely. Instead, the episode forces SpongeBob to suffer through his normal daily activities while trapped just to create more opportunities for torture. The pacing of the episode received criticism for being monotonous. The entire plot is SpongeBob is stuck, tries to do things while stuck, suffers while stuck, then eventually gets unstuck. There is no subplot, no B-story, no variety in the structure. Every scene exists only to show SpongeBob failing at something or getting hurt because of the ringer. This repetitive structure becomes tedious rather than entertaining. The mysterious Mr. Enter, a popular animation reviewer, created a video about this episode that significantly influenced how viewers perceived it. His detailed analysis pointing out the cruel treatment of SpongeBob and the terrible moral lesson helped articulate why so many viewers felt uncomfortable watching the episode. After his review gained attention, discussions about Stuck in the Ringer intensified in online communities. The episode represents a broader problem in Season 7, where character torture became a common plot device. Multiple episodes from this season feature beloved characters suffering without deserving it and without receiving any justice or resolution. Stuck in the Ringer exemplifies this trend by making SpongeBob suffer physically and emotionally for 11 minutes, then ending with him stuck again after briefly escaping. Viewers who grew up loving SpongeBob for its creativity, optimism, and humor found this type of content deeply disappointing. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Little Yellow Book. The episode starts with an exterior shot of the Krusty Krab. Inside, Squidward is at the register boat smiling casually. He says, "Ah, yes, just how he likes it, nice and empty." He looks around at the empty restaurant. The only person in the restaurant is Old Man Walker, who is sitting at a table. Old Man Walker waves and says he is still here. Squidward repeats that it is nice and empty. He sits down at the register boat and presses a button revealing a slot with a pillow. He pulls down a picture of an island and turns on a fan and sips a drink with a straw and a little pink umbrella in the glass. He is relaxed. A customer asks if Squidward works here while looking over the register. Squidward spits out his drink and sighs. He says welcome to the Krusty Krab, then stops when he sees a large line of people. He gasps and says, well, there goes his nap. He announces multiple orders up and sticks his head through the order window. He notices SpongeBob is not in the kitchen. He calls for SpongeBob and walks into the kitchen while order tapes fall on the floor. He asks where SpongeBob is and says he needs to get out here and make those Krabby Patties. He continues looking for SpongeBob in the kitchen. SpongeBob starts laughing from inside a barrel. Squidward looks through the barrel hole and sees SpongeBob writing in a book labeled My Diary on the front. Squidward grumbles and sticks a megaphone into the hole. He inhales and yells SpongeBob's name. SpongeBob comes out of the megaphone like liquid. Squidward tells him to get it together because the dining room is full of ravenous customers. The customers are making monkey noises, chewing on things, and swinging from ropes. SpongeBob goes to the storage freezer in liquid form and comes back out with a stack of patties. He says he got it. He spins like a tornado, throwing the patties onto the grill, then presses a button on his spatula twice that makes it fold out to have triple length. He flips 3 patties while whistling. Squidward wonders what that imbecile was doing in there. He looks in the barrel and pulls out SpongeBob's diary, asking if it is an old book. SpongeBob looks back scared and says nothing. He takes the diary from Squidward and places it between the fryers. Squidward asks what is going on here. SpongeBob gets all the patties into a stack and puts ingredients inside of himself. Then he jumps out to the dining area where he jumps onto the ceiling and shoots out Krabby Patties to the customers. The customers thank him and wave. They take bites and give thumbs up to each other. SpongeBob continues to shoot out Krabby Patties. Customers clap again. Old Man Walker says, "Excuse me," he wanted pickles on his. SpongeBob taps his head twice, shooting pickles onto the Krabby Patty. Squidward looks out the order window from the kitchen to the main area of the Krusty Krab. He picks up the diary from between the fryers and says if SpongeBrain is keeping the book away from him, then he has no choice but to read it. SpongeBob walks into the kitchen and says he will take that, thank you. He takes the diary. The scene transitions to SpongeBob sitting on top of a barrel writing in his diary. Squidward looks through the order window with his nose hanging over, saying there he goes again, scribbling away in that little book. He turns back around and admits his curiosity is piqued. He makes a pun about being peaked to peek at that book. He laughs as a rim shot is heard, then sighs and says, "Oh, puns." He wipes away tears from laughing. The restaurant is empty again with only Old Man Walker still at his table. Old Man Walker laughs. Squidward holds a brown bag and tells SpongeBob he needs to make a delivery. SpongeBob closes his diary, sets it down, and turns towards Squidward, saying, "Okay." Squidward tells him the address is on the bag. SpongeBob says he got it and walks out of the kitchen. Squidward whistles and walks to the diary and picks it up, then gasps. He says it is a diary and this is going to be good. He tries to open it but says, "Drat, it is locked." He tries to pry open the lock. He says he needs a hairpin. Mr. Krabs is in his office, writing on a sheet of paper. Squidward reaches behind him and pulls out a hairpin. Mr. Krabs' hair puffs out into an afro. Squidward unlocks the lock with the pin and opens the diary. It glows and a heavenly choir sings. He says, "And now, the diary of a moron." The episode shows a long diary entry where SpongeBob describes his day in an extremely positive way. He narrates how Squidward called him in the morning after Gary ate some of Squidward's belongings. SpongeBob interprets Squidward's angry yelling as thoughtful critique and close friendship. He describes how Gary bit Squidward's hand and SpongeBob was hurried along to work. He arrived an hour and a half early for what he calls his favorite day of the year, cleaning day. The narration shows SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs cleaning while SpongeBob describes it enthusiastically. Mr. Krabs uses SpongeBob as a chimney sweep. The narration ends with Squidward saying "Great Neptune," he had no idea, and the depth of SpongeBob's delusion is awe-inspiring. The scene cuts to SpongeBob standing in front of a dumpster, confused about the delivery address. He knocks on the dumpster and says something about this delivery address does not seem right. He realizes Squidward must have been the victim of a prank phone call. He calls Squidward gullible and sets the delivery in the dumpster. He walks back to the Krusty Krab. Patrick comes up from inside the dumpster, excited about finding a ketchup packet. He holds up the ketchup packet and a diaper. This scene particularly disturbed viewers because Patrick clearly intends to put ketchup on a used diaper and eat it, which is extremely disgusting content for a children's show. SpongeBob returns to the Krusty Krab laughing, saying Squidward is going to laugh when he hears what happened. Squidward crouches down to hide. SpongeBob asks where Squidward is and says he could have sworn he just saw him. Squidward nervously sweats and tells SpongeBob that one of the customers dropped his watch in a toilet and he needs SpongeBob to fish it out. He holds up a plunger and a hanger. SpongeBob takes them, saying duty calls, and walks to the restrooms. Squidward takes SpongeBob's diary out from inside his Krusty Krab employee hat. He opens it, turns the page, and laughs. His laugh turns into a cough as he sees a large customer at the register boat. The customer asks if Squidward is laughing at him. Squidward says what? Oh no, and explains he was just reading what SpongeBob wrote in his diary. He says it is hilarious. The customer says reading somebody else's diary is terrible, but tells Squidward to tell him more. Squidward reads that when SpongeBob sees Plaid, he has the uncontrollable urge to cluck like a chicken. Both laugh. Mr. Krabs appears at the register boat asking if somebody said plaid. He says he is a plaid enthusiast and just got his new kilt today. He is wearing a plaid kilt. Squidward asks SpongeBob to come here, please. SpongeBob walks out of the restroom carrying a tire, umbrella, guitar, anchor, and Old Man Walker. He says he could not find that watch anywhere and all he found was this stuff. Old Man Walker says he fell in. SpongeBob says, and that guy. Squidward asks what SpongeBob thinks of Mr. Krabs' new plaid kilt. SpongeBob stutters the word plaid and his face doubles with two mouths. He throws everything out of his hands. Old Man Walker yells, hey. SpongeBob starts clucking like a chicken and crows like a rooster. Mr. Krabs says, well, you do not have to be nasty about it. Squidward and the customer laugh while SpongeBob continues clucking. SpongeBob slaps himself and says to avert his eyes. He covers his eyes and says he has to take his break. He runs through the kitchen out the back, then pulls out bubble soap and blows bubbles and sighs. Squidward reads to more customers that SpongeBob has named his spatula Fifi. The customers all laugh. One customer tells another that SpongeBob named his spatula Fifi. That customer tells customers behind him what kind of name is Fifi. Patrick laughs loudly and uncontrollably, asking who ever heard of naming a spatula Fifi. He says it is a girl's name and asks his own spatula named Frank. SpongeBob walks out of the kitchen holding his spatula, saying he is back from his break. He asks if there are any orders. Patrick says, yeah, cook him up a Krabby Patty with good old Fifi. SpongeBob gasps when hearing that name and says, sure thing. He runs to the kitchen asking Fifi how Patrick knew her name and if she has been talking. Squidward says this is the best one yet. He reads that if SpongeBob hears the Bikini Bottom municipal anthem, he cannot help but take off all his clothes and dance around in his underwear. Everyone laughs. Squidward says quiet and tells them to watch this. He pulls out his radio and plays the anthem. SpongeBob calmly throws his spatula and takes off his clothes except his underwear and dances around. Everyone laughs and the music stops. SpongeBob looks over at Squidward, who is holding his diary, while he, Patrick, and the customers laugh. SpongeBob sees his diary and says, Squidward, how could you? He cries and runs into the dining area with everyone laughing at him. He runs into Mr. Krabs and clucks like a chicken again for a second. He continues crying and runs out the door. The scene shows customers who have stopped laughing after realizing the diary belonged to SpongeBob. Squidward laughs in satisfaction. One customer asks if that was that little dude's diary. The door slams. Customers murmur, overlapping, saying, that is not okay and that was uncool. Mr. Krabs walks over to Squidward, angered by his actions. He says that is low, even for Squidward, and tells him he'd better apologize. Squidward scoffs remorselessly and says, SpongeBob will get over it. This moment is critical because it shows the townspeople suddenly pretending they did not know the diary belonged to SpongeBob, even though Squidward explicitly told them from the beginning that it was SpongeBob's diary, and they actively participated in listening to the secrets and laughing at SpongeBob. The scene transitions to SpongeBob crying outside the Krusty Krab. Squidward is scatting and humming and pulls out an umbrella while walking by SpongeBob crying. A character named Morty announces extra, extra, read all about it. Jerk reads diary, local fry cook, devastated. He is holding up a newspaper. Squidward asks to see one of those papers. A cover shows a sad photo of SpongeBob with writing that says local fry cook devastated. Squidward laughs and tosses the paper on the ground. Citizens stare at him scornfully. Squidward calls for a taxi while waving. A taxi car screeches its tires approaching him. The driver says, whoa, hold it, pal, asking if Squidward is that diary reader. Squidward confirms, yes, he is. The driver drives away in an angry attitude after hearing Squidward's revelation. The tires squeal and Squidward coughs in the exhaust. As Squidward continues walking, multiple people yell insults at him. Someone calls him diary thief. Another calls him jerk. Someone yells from outside a house window calling him secret stealer. A woman tells someone named Billy to stay away from that mean old diary reader. Squidward calls them morons. The scene changes to outside SpongeBob's, Patrick's, and Squidward's houses with Squidward at his front door. A character named Quincy tells Squidward that by reading another person's diary, he has violated the terms of his loan. He holds up loan papers and says they are repossessing his house. Squidward coughs and asks what? Quincy tells workers to take it away. Squidward's house is lifted away with a crane. Thunder crashes and it starts to rain. Squidward puts up his umbrella and gets hit by lightning. He yells, ow! The scene transitions to a bench where Squidward is laying with newspapers over his body. The papers blow away. Two police officers tap Squidward on the head with a club. One officer says he cannot sleep here. A horn honks. The officer says, wait a second, asking if Squidward is that diary reader. She says she had a diary once and her brother read it. She says she had a brother once. She tells Squidward to come on because they have a special place for people like him. The scene changes to Squidward now locked in a pillory. Patrick suddenly appears and throws a tomato at Squidward as revenge for reading his best friend's diary. He calls Squidward diary reader. Squidward asks what and says Patrick read it too. Patrick says, "Oh sure, blame everyone but yourself," adding that is so Squidward. He throws another tomato and walks away. Squidward grunts. SpongeBob walks up saying hi Squidward and asking how it is going. Squidward says oh thank goodness and tells SpongeBob he has to forgive him. SpongeBob asks what for. Squidward says for reading his diary. SpongeBob says oh that and explains that everyone was so amused by it that he had it published. He holds up a book titled SpongeBob's Diary, saying it is a bestseller and he owes it all to Squidward. He adds that Squidward only read his work diary and has never even seen his secret personal diary. He holds up a diary titled My Secret Personal Diary with a unicorn, smiley face, heart, and rainbow on the cover. He says now that would have been really embarrassing. A customer suddenly appears yelling, "There he is, that diary reader." A group of people holding tomatoes show up. The crowd says yeah, while shouting angrily at Squidward. SpongeBob tells people to stop their assault. He says through his art as an author, he has forgiven Squidward. The customer asks if SpongeBob knows Squidward is reading his personal diary. Squidward laughs while holding and reading the diary. SpongeBob yells, "Squidward, how could you?" SpongeBob bursts into tears and runs away once again. After SpongeBob runs away, the crowd throws tomatoes at Squidward, yelling at him. Squidward says he does not care because this is so worth it. He laughs while more tomatoes are thrown at him. The episode ends. This episode earned a rating of 5.2 out of 10 on IMDb. The episode aired on the 2nd of March 2013 during Season 9 to 4.73 million viewers in the United States. The episode received significant criticism from viewers for multiple reasons related to character behavior and the overall moral message. The most controversial aspect of the episode is the hypocrisy of the townspeople. Throughout the episode, Squidward explicitly states he is reading SpongeBob's diary. The customers gather around to listen. They laugh at every secret Squidward reveals. They actively participate in mocking SpongeBob when Squidward tricks him into clucking like a chicken and dancing in his underwear. But the moment SpongeBob discovers what is happening and runs away crying, the townspeople suddenly act shocked and ask if that was that little dude's diary. They immediately turn against Squidward and treat him as if he committed a terrible crime alone, completely ignoring their own participation in humiliating SpongeBob. Patrick's behavior exemplifies this hypocrisy. Patrick laughs along with everyone else when Squidward reveals SpongeBob's secrets. Patrick even has his own spatula named Frank, yet he mocks SpongeBob for naming his spatula Fifi. Patrick actively participates in embarrassing SpongeBob by asking him to cook with Fifi in front of everyone. But later, when Squidward is locked in the pillory, Patrick throws tomatoes at him and calls him a diary reader. When Squidward points out that Patrick read it too, Patrick says, "Oh sure, blame everyone but yourself," as if Patrick was innocent. This makes no logical sense because Patrick did read the diary and did laugh at SpongeBob. Squidward's characterization in this episode upset many viewers. While Squidward has always been portrayed as grumpy and annoyed by SpongeBob, he usually has some limit to his cruelty. In the earlier episode, Fools in April, Squidward plays a mean prank on SpongeBob that makes him cry, but Squidward immediately feels terrible and spends the rest of the episode trying to apologize because he genuinely did not mean to make SpongeBob cry. But in Little Yellow Book, Squidward deliberately sets out to humiliate SpongeBob. He tricks SpongeBob into making a fool of himself multiple times. He shows no remorse when SpongeBob discovers what happened and runs away crying. When Mr. Krabs tells Squidward that was low even for him and he better apologize, Squidward scoffs and says SpongeBob will get over it. The ending completely undermines any sense of resolution or justice. After Squidward suffers consequences, including losing his house and being put in a pillory, SpongeBob appears and explains that the diary Squidward read was just his work diary, which he published as a book. SpongeBob forgives Squidward. This seems like it might lead to a positive ending, but then SpongeBob shows Squidward his secret personal diary. Someone in the crowd immediately tells SpongeBob that Squidward is reading it. Squidward is shown laughing while holding the personal diary. SpongeBob cries and asks how Squidward could do this, then runs away crying again. The crowd throws tomatoes at Squidward, but Squidward says he does not care because this is so worth it while laughing. This ending sends a terrible message. Squidward learned nothing from his punishment. He immediately did the exact same thing again the moment he had the opportunity. The episode suggests that reading someone's private diary and humiliating them publicly is worth any consequences because Squidward finds it entertaining. There is no growth, no lesson learned, no positive resolution. The episode just ends with Squidward being pelted with tomatoes while laughing about violating SpongeBob's privacy again. The scene where Patrick implies he will eat a used diaper with ketchup on it particularly disgusted viewers. When SpongeBob delivers food to a dumpster thinking it is a real address, Patrick emerges from the garbage excited to find a ketchup packet. He holds up both the ketchup packet and a diaper, saying the ketchup will go great on this old diaper. Since the diaper came from garbage, it was clearly used, meaning it would contain feces or urine. This is an extremely disgusting image to present in a children's cartoon and serves no comedic purpose beyond trying to shock viewers with gross-out humor. The episode raises multiple logical problems that viewers pointed out. Why would SpongeBob bring his diary to work and leave it in a barrel where anyone could find it? If SpongeBob published his work diary for everyone to read, does that mean everyone who bought the book is also guilty of reading someone else's diary? What is the actual difference between a work diary and a secret personal diary when both contain private thoughts? Why would SpongeBob show Squidward his secret personal diary after Squidward just got punished for reading his work diary? The episode creates these plot holes without addressing them. SpongeBob's characterization in his diary entry also confused viewers. The entry shows SpongeBob interpreting Squidward's angry, screaming, and insults as thoughtful critique and signs of close friendship. While SpongeBob has always been optimistic and sees the best in people, this takes his positivity to an unrealistic extreme that makes him seem delusional rather than kind. The episode describes this as the depth of his delusion being awe-inspiring. This portrayal makes SpongeBob seem mentally unwell rather than sweetly naive. The punishment Squidward receives seems disproportionate in some ways, while being completely undone in other ways. Losing his house because reading a diary violated loan terms makes no logical sense. Banks do not repossess houses because someone committed an unrelated social faux pas. But even though Squidward loses his house and becomes homeless, the episode treats this as justified. Then, at the end, Squidward faces no real consequences because he immediately does the same thing again while saying it is worth it. The episode cannot decide if Squidward should be punished or rewarded for his behavior. Mr. Krabs is notably the only character who behaves appropriately in this episode. He does not laugh when Squidward reads the diary. He immediately recognizes that what Squidward did was wrong. He tells Squidward it is low even for him and demands an apology. Mr. Krabs shows consistency in his disapproval, unlike the townspeople who participated in the mockery then pretended to be innocent. This makes Mr. Krabs one of the few bright spots in an otherwise problematic episode. The scene where SpongeBob is forced to cluck like a chicken and dance in his underwear because of secrets from his diary particularly upset viewers. These are involuntary compulsions that SpongeBob clearly cannot control. Squidward deliberately triggers these compulsions in front of a crowd specifically to humiliate SpongeBob. This is a form of psychological torment, where Squidward uses private information to force SpongeBob into embarrassing situations against his will. The fact that the crowd finds this funny rather than concerning shows a complete lack of empathy. The episode aired during Season 9, which was already receiving criticism for declining quality. Many longtime viewers felt that Season 9 represented a low point in the series where mean-spirited humor replaced the clever writing and genuine heart that made early SpongeBob successful. Little Yellow Book exemplifies many of the problems viewers identified in this era. Characters acting cruelly without consequences, humor based on humiliation rather than creativity, logical inconsistencies in the plot, and endings that provide no resolution or positive message. The comparison to Fools in April is particularly relevant because that episode handles a similar premise much better. In Fools in April, Squidward pranks SpongeBob on April Fool's Day in ways that gradually become meaner. When the prank goes too far and makes SpongeBob cry, Squidward immediately regrets it. He tries to apologize but physically cannot say the words due to his pride. The episode focuses on Squidward's internal struggle between his ego and his conscience. Eventually, he manages to apologize and SpongeBob immediately forgives him. That episode has character growth, genuine emotion, and a satisfying resolution. Little Yellow Book has none of those elements despite starting with a similar concept of Squidward making SpongeBob cry through public humiliation. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Pet Sitter Pat. The episode begins with SpongeBob reading through his mail and getting a letter from his grandma. The letter invites him to her birthday party. SpongeBob is excited, but then trips over Gary. He realizes he needs someone to take care of Gary while he is at the party. SpongeBob first asks Squidward to watch Gary. Squidward immediately refuses. He shows SpongeBob his ruined kelp garden and explains that Gary ate it. SpongeBob asks Gary if that is true. Gary looks guilty. SpongeBob apologizes to Squidward and decides to ask someone else. SpongeBob goes to Patrick's rock and asks Patrick if he can take care of Gary, while SpongeBob attends his grandma's birthday party. Patrick is eating chips and agrees to help. SpongeBob is very grateful. He gives Patrick a detailed schedule listing all the things he needs to do for Gary. The schedule includes feeding Gary, giving him a bath, and reading him a bedtime story. Patrick says he got it and assures SpongeBob that Gary is safe with him. SpongeBob leaves for his grandma's house. The moment SpongeBob is gone, Patrick looks at the schedule. He is holding it upside down. He says the words look funny and complains about SpongeBob's handwriting. He throws the schedule away, saying he does not need it. Patrick announces it looks like it is just him and Gary now. Gary sighs. Patrick goes to the bathroom. The episode shows a long time passing. When Patrick finally comes out, Gary is waiting near the pantry door trying to show Patrick where his food is kept. Patrick misunderstands and thinks Gary wants to play a game. Gary keeps trying to communicate about the food. Patrick opens the pantry and finds a bag of snail food. He says, "Oh, Gary wants to eat this." But then Patrick says he better check if it is okay for Gary to eat. Patrick opens the bag and pours all the snail food into his own mouth. He eats everything in the bag in front of Gary. Gary looks horrified as Patrick consumes his entire food supply. Patrick finishes eating and says it tastes good, so it must be okay for Gary. But the bag is now completely empty. At his grandma's house, SpongeBob sits at the table while his grandma serves dessert. She brings out a birthday cake with many candles on it. SpongeBob starts having worried thoughts about Patrick and Gary. He imagines Patrick doing various bad things to Gary. His grandma notices SpongeBob is distracted. SpongeBob asks if he can use the phone. His grandma says of course. SpongeBob calls his house. Patrick answers the phone. SpongeBob asks if everything is okay. Patrick is trying to give Gary a bath. He has filled the bathtub with water and poured snail food into the water. Gary refuses to get in. Patrick tells Gary they do not eat the bath. Gary attacks Patrick and they fight. SpongeBob hears the chaos over the phone and asks what is happening. Patrick lies and says everything is fine. He hangs up on SpongeBob. Patrick is frustrated that Gary will not take a bath. He says if Gary will not come to the bath, then the bath will come to him. This line references an earlier episode called Gary Takes a Bath, where SpongeBob said something similar. Patrick grabs a hose and starts spraying water at Gary. Gary runs away from the water. Patrick chases him through the house, with the hose spraying water everywhere. This causes water to flood the entire house. Patrick does not notice the flooding. He is only focused on trying to spray Gary. SpongeBob calls again. Patrick answers while still spraying the hose. SpongeBob reminds Patrick about the schedule. Patrick screams that he gets it repeatedly. He throws the phone out the window. The phone flies back and hits Patrick in the back of the head. Patrick slips on Gary's slime trail and falls down. He gets up and says, "Wait a minute." He tells Gary he has something cool to show him. Patrick pulls out a flamethrower. He says if Gary does not like water, then maybe he will like the opposite of water. Patrick aims the flamethrower at Gary and starts shooting fire at him. This is the most controversial scene in the entire episode. Patrick is literally trying to burn Gary with fire to give him a bath. The flames hit SpongeBob's bed and burn it to ashes. Gary runs away in terror. Patrick chases after him with the flamethrower still shooting fire. SpongeBob calls again. Patrick answers and says everything is fine. He hangs up quickly. Gary tries to hide, but a can falls on his stomach, hurting him more. Patrick decides Gary needs to be dried off now. He finds a container labeled salt. He says, "Perfect, salt will dry Gary right off." Salt is extremely dangerous and deadly to snails. If Patrick had used the salt on Gary, it would have killed him. But before Patrick can use the salt, he changes his mind. Instead, he grabs a hairdryer. He turns the hairdryer to maximum heat and aims it directly at Gary. The extreme heat from the hairdryer causes Gary to shrivel up. His body becomes dried out and wrinkled. Patrick says that feels better. Gary looks miserable. Patrick then says he is tired and goes to sleep. He lies down to watch television. The television is broken, but Patrick stares at the static on the screen anyway. The flooding from earlier continues to get worse. Water fills the entire house. SpongeBob is back at his grandma's house trying to enjoy the party. His grandma tries to blow out the candles on her cake. She keeps blowing but cannot blow them all out because there are too many candles. She makes a joke saying if she were any older they would be in danger of burning down the house. SpongeBob imagines his own house burning down with Gary trapped inside. He panics and asks to use the phone again. He calls Patrick one more time. Patrick answers the phone. SpongeBob asks if everything is okay over there. The camera shows that the house is completely flooded. Gary is actually having fun swimming in the water because snails like water. Patrick also seems happy floating in the flood. SpongeBob hears them laughing and playing. He thinks they are in danger and screams that he is coming home. SpongeBob runs all the way from his grandma's house back to his own house. When he arrives, he is exhausted from running. He opens his front door and water pours out. The entire house is flooded and partially destroyed. SpongeBob looks shocked. He hears Gary meowing from upstairs. He walks upstairs through the water. When he gets to his room, he sees Gary reading a book to Patrick. Patrick is sleeping. Gary is reading from a book called Snail Tales. SpongeBob says how nice that Gary is reading Patrick a bedtime story. Patrick wakes up and says he thought the book was called Meow 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 because he cannot read, and Gary only says meow. The episode ends there. This episode earned a rating of 4.7 out of 10 on IMDb. The episode aired on September 16, 2011 during Season 8 to 4.39 million viewers in the United States. It was written by Casey Alexander, Zeus Service, and Richard Purcell, the same writing team behind several other controversial episodes. The episode received overwhelmingly negative reactions from viewers who felt it crossed the line from comedy into cruelty. The most disturbing element of the episode is Patrick's treatment of Gary throughout the 11 minutes. Patrick is supposed to be taking care of Gary, but instead puts him through repeated torture. He eats all of Gary's food in front of him while Gary is clearly hungry. He floods the house, trying to force Gary into a bath. He chases Gary with fire from a flamethrower. He burns Gary with a hairdryer. These are not comedic misunderstandings or innocent mistakes. Patrick actively harms Gary through negligence and dangerous actions that could have killed him. The flamethrower scene particularly shocked viewers. Patrick explicitly uses a weapon designed to shoot fire at Gary to try to give him a bath. The logic makes no sense. Patrick says if Gary does not like water, he will try the opposite of water, which Patrick interprets as fire. He aims the flamethrower directly at Gary and fires. The flames destroy SpongeBob's bed. Gary runs for his life while Patrick chases him with the weapon still firing. This scene shows Patrick attempting to burn Gary alive. For a children's cartoon, this level of violence directed at a beloved pet character is extremely disturbing. The salt scene also upset many viewers who understand that salt kills snails. The episode shows Patrick finding salt and saying it will dry Gary off. Patrick does not use the salt, but the fact that he considered it shows how dangerous his ignorance has become. If Patrick had actually used salt on Gary, the episode would have shown Patrick killing SpongeBob's pet. Even though Patrick does not use the salt, viewers are left knowing how close Gary came to death through Patrick's stupidity. The hairdryer scene crosses another line. Patrick uses extreme heat from a hairdryer directly on Gary's body. The animation shows Gary shriveling up from the heat. His body becomes dried out and wrinkled. This is physical harm being inflicted on Gary for the supposed comedy of watching him suffer. Patrick asks if that feels better while Gary is clearly in distress. The episode treats this torture as if it is funny rather than horrifying. Patrick's characterization in this episode represents an extreme version of his Flanderization. In early SpongeBob seasons, Patrick is unintelligent but kind-hearted. When he makes mistakes, they come from genuine confusion rather than negligence. But in Pet Sitter Pat, Patrick ignores explicit instructions, throws away the schedule without trying to follow it, and causes harm through willful ignorance. He eats all of Gary's food, while Gary watches hungrily. He uses weapons and extreme heat on Gary. His actions go beyond stupid into actively harmful. The scene where Patrick eats all of Gary's food particularly frustrated viewers. Gary clearly tries to show Patrick where the food is kept. Patrick finds the snail food. But instead of feeding Gary, Patrick decides he needs to test if the food is safe by eating it himself. He consumes the entire bag in front of Gary. This leaves Gary with no food. Patrick does not seem to care or even notice that Gary is now starving. The selfishness of eating someone else's food while they watch hungry is cruel, regardless of whether Patrick understands what he is doing. The flooding of the house raises questions about SpongeBob's reaction at the end. When SpongeBob returns home, water pours out when he opens the door. The house is partially destroyed. His bed has been burned to ashes, yet SpongeBob walks upstairs and sees Gary reading to Patrick as if everything is normal. SpongeBob does not ask what happened. He does not get angry or demand an explanation. He just accepts that Gary is reading a story. This makes no sense given the obvious destruction surrounding them. The ending undermines any sense of consequences or resolution. Patrick tortured Gary for the entire episode. He nearly killed him multiple times through fire, heat, starvation, and potential salt exposure. He destroyed SpongeBob's house. But the episode ends with Patrick peacefully sleeping while Gary reads to him. Patrick faces no punishment. SpongeBob does not even acknowledge what went wrong. The episode suggests that Patrick's actions were acceptable because everything worked out fine in the end, even though Gary suffered tremendously. The comparison to A Pal for Gary is inevitable because both episodes feature Gary being tortured, but the two episodes have different problems. In A Pal for Gary, SpongeBob wrongly blames Gary for defending himself against Puffy Fluffy. SpongeBob is the problem because he refuses to listen to Gary or recognize the danger. In Pet Sitter Pat, Patrick is the problem because he actively causes harm through his actions. Both episodes are criticized for Gary torture, but Pet Sitter Pat shows more direct physical violence against Gary. The episode also references an earlier episode called Gary Takes a Bath from Season 2. In that episode, SpongeBob tries many creative ways to get Gary to take a bath because Gary does not want one. The episode is silly and harmless, with SpongeBob using humor and entertainment to convince Gary. Pet Sitter Pat tries to recreate that concept but replaces the innocent creativity with actual violence. Patrick uses fire and extreme force instead of clever ideas. This shows how the show's humor changed from creative to cruel. SpongeBob's visions at his grandma's house add another frustrating element. SpongeBob keeps imagining Patrick doing bad things to Gary, but when SpongeBob calls home to check, Patrick lies and says everything is fine. SpongeBob believes the lies even though his instincts tell him something is wrong. When SpongeBob finally hears Gary and Patrick having fun in the flood, he interprets their happiness as danger and rushes home unnecessarily. The episode sets up SpongeBob's paranoia as justified since Patrick is harming Gary, but then has SpongeBob misread the one moment when Gary is actually okay. The episode's title references pet sitting, which is a real responsibility people take seriously. Good pet sitters follow instructions carefully, keep pets safe, and ensure their needs are met. Patrick does the opposite of everything a pet sitter should do. He throws away the instructions. He endangers Gary repeatedly. He ignores Gary's needs for food and safety. The episode makes a joke out of pet care responsibilities, which sends a poor message about how to treat animals. Gary's characterization at the end also confused viewers. After being starved, chased with fire, burned with heat, and traumatized all day, Gary is shown peacefully reading a bedtime story to Patrick. This suggests Gary harbors no bad feelings toward Patrick, despite the abuse. The episode provides no explanation for why Gary would want to help Patrick after Patrick hurt him so badly. This ending feels forced, as if the writers needed a way to end the episode quickly without dealing with the consequences of Patrick's actions. The mysterious Mr. Enter, a popular animation reviewer, called this episode the worst SpongeBob episode ever made. His initial review of the episode was extremely harsh and included personal attacks on writer Casey Alexander. This led to some of Mr. Enter's viewers sending harassment to Casey Alexander on social media. Mr. Enter later remade his review to apologize for his overly harsh language and condemned the harassment, but the controversy brought even more negative attention to the episode. The episode aired during Season 8, which many viewers already considered a low point for the series. Multiple Season 8 episodes featured increased meanness, character torture, and logical problems. Pet Sitter Pat exemplifies these issues by showing a main character actively harming a beloved pet character for 11 minutes without any real consequences or lesson learned. The episode treats Gary's suffering as comedy rather than acknowledging it as cruel. Marion Ross voiced Grandma Squarepants in this episode. She is a respected actress who played the role warmly. The scenes at Grandma's house provide brief relief from the Gary torture. The joke about Grandma having too many candles to blow out because of her age is genuinely funny. These moments show that the episode could have been entertaining if it had focused on the birthday party subplot rather than the Gary torture plot. The episode creates logical problems that viewers noticed. Why would SpongeBob ask Patrick to pet sit when Patrick has proven himself unreliable in countless previous episodes? Why does SpongeBob not notice his destroyed house when he returns? How does Gary go from being traumatized to happily reading stories? Why does Patrick face no consequences for nearly killing Gary and destroying the house? The episode fails to address any of these questions. The flood that fills the house comes from Patrick, leaving the hose running, the sink on, and the bathtub overflowing. Patrick then falls asleep, while water continues pouring. This level of negligence is almost unbelievable, even for Patrick's established stupidity. A real pet sitter who flooded someone's entire house would face serious consequences, including legal liability. But the episode treats the flooding as just another silly thing that happened rather than a major disaster. Patrick throwing away SpongeBob's detailed schedule because he cannot read it shows another frustration. Patrick is holding the schedule upside down. He complains about SpongeBob's handwriting when the actual problem is Patrick's inability to read or even hold paper correctly. If Patrick genuinely cannot read, he should have told SpongeBob before agreeing to pet sit. Instead, Patrick accepts the responsibility, then immediately abandons all the instructions without telling SpongeBob. The episode represents a broader pattern in later SpongeBob seasons, where writers seem to believe that making characters suffer was inherently funny. But humor requires more than just showing pain. It requires clever setups, unexpected twists, or relatable situations. Pet Sitter Pat simply shows Gary being harmed repeatedly without any clever comedy to balance it. The episode expects viewers to laugh at a snail being chased with fire, which most viewers found disturbing rather than entertaining. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Ink Lemonade. Ink Lemonade is a SpongeBob SquarePants episode from Season 11 that aired on May 9th in 2018. The episode received an IMDb rating of 4.7 out of 10. Many viewers found the episode uncomfortable to watch and criticized it for being gross and disturbing. The episode focuses on Patrick running a lemonade stand and repeatedly scaring Squidward to get ink from his nose to sell as black lemonade to customers. The episode begins with Patrick sitting at his lemonade stand outside his rock home. He is selling what he calls lemonade, but the pitcher only contains water with no actual lemons in it. Patrick yells through a megaphone to announce he is selling lemonade. Squidward comes outside, carrying a bag of trash to throw away. He sees Patrick at the lemonade stand and asks what Patrick is selling. Patrick yells through the megaphone again that he is selling lemonade. Squidward points out that Patrick has no lemons and questions how Patrick can sell lemonade without any lemons. Patrick appears confused and asks if he needs lemons. Squidward takes out a rotten lemon and throws it directly at Patrick's eye. The lemon burns Patrick's eye. Squidward laughs and says sorry that the lemon is a little bruised. Patrick pulls a bandage from his armpit and puts it on the rotten lemon. He then drops the bandaged rotten lemon into his pitcher of water. Patrick continues sitting at his lemonade stand yelling through two megaphones about selling lemonade. The loud noise startles Squidward, who is inside his house, shaving the hair from his nostrils with a razor. The razor goes out of control inside Squidward's nose, causing him to scream and fall to the floor. Outside at the lemonade stand, a customer named Kara drinks the entire pitcher of Patrick's water. Kara thanks Patrick for the drink, but then gags when he realizes the bandage from Patrick's armpit is stuck to his tongue. Patrick removes the bandage from Kara's tongue and puts it back in his armpit. He tells Kara the bandage is not included with the lemonade. Kara says he feels sick and asks where he can go. Patrick points to Squidward's house. Kara runs to Squidward's front door, opens it, and throws up inside the house. He then closes the door and leaves. Squidward comes out and slips on the vomit near his front door. Squidward angrily walks over to Patrick and asks what he is doing. Patrick says he ran out of lemons, so he is now squeezing a toy fire truck. Squidward tells Patrick that will not work. Patrick squeezes red paint out of the fire truck toy. SpongeBob suddenly appears behind Squidward and screams through a megaphone asking for one fire truck lemonade. The loud noise scares Squidward so much that ink sprays out from his nose into Patrick's pitcher. Squidward panics and runs back into his house. Patrick gives SpongeBob a cup of the ink. SpongeBob drinks it and his face distorts as he gasps and shrieks. After a moment of silence, SpongeBob says the drink is delicious. His mouth, tongue, and teeth are completely black from the ink. A customer named Betty arrives and asks what they are selling. Patrick yells through his megaphone that it is lemonade. SpongeBob yells through his megaphone that it is black lemonade. Patrick gives Betty a glass of the black lemonade. She drinks it and has the same reaction as SpongeBob with gasping and shrieking. She shrinks and disappears, then reappears, blowing fire from her mouth. After calming down, Betty yells through a megaphone that black lemonade is a unique taste sensation and asks for another glass. Patrick tries to give her more, but realizes the pitcher is empty. He tells SpongeBob to cover for him while he gets more black lemonade. Patrick takes the empty pitcher and knocks on Squidward's door. Squidward answers with tissues stuffed in his nose. Patrick asks Squidward to do the scared thing again and make more ink. Squidward refuses and slams the door. Patrick thinks about what to do. Inside Patrick's body, a smaller version of himself goes to his brain and rings a bell, giving him an idea. Patrick rips open his skin to show his internal organs, including his jaw, trachea, heart, lungs, and intestines. He knocks on Squidward's door again. When Squidward opens the door and sees Patrick's exposed organs and intestines, he screams in horror. As Squidward screams, ink sprays from his nose, filling Patrick's pitcher. Patrick thanks Squidward and runs back to the lemonade stand. SpongeBob tells Patrick they need more black lemonade and hands him 2 empty pitchers. Patrick goes back to Squidward's house with a new plan. He calls for a kitty as if trying to attract a cat. A giant red sea spider crawls by. Patrick opens Squidward's door wide enough for the spider to enter. Inside the house, Squidward is sitting on his couch listening to music on his phonograph. He goes to change the record, but the spider takes the record and Squidward accidentally puts the spider's claw on the phonograph. The claw makes a terrible scratching sound on the record. Squidward looks up and sees the giant spider. He screams that he hates spiders. As he screams, ink sprays from his nose, filling Patrick's pitchers. Squidward climbs up the wall and crawls through a hole in the ceiling while continuing to spray ink. Patrick rides on the spider's head, directing it like a horse. Squidward hides behind a chair, whimpering. Patrick slides off the spider's back and says, "Boo." Squidward screams again, spraying more ink that fills 2 more pitchers. Squidward then climbs on top of his kitchen cabinets. The spider approaches him, making him spray even more ink, filling 2 additional pitchers. Patrick thanks Squidward and leaves with all the pitchers of ink. Patrick returns to the lemonade stand and sees a very long line of customers waiting. He realizes he needs to get even more black lemonade. Back inside Squidward's house, the kitchen is covered in ink, making a complete mess. Squidward emerges from the sink drain and looks around nervously. He hears sounds and keeps hiding in different places, including under a rug and inside cabinets. He becomes paranoid, asking if anyone is there. When Patrick rings the doorbell, Squidward carefully opens the door, but the door slams shut, locking him outside. The lights turn on, and Squidward finds himself in a haunted-themed area that Patrick created. Squidward says he has lost his mind and cannot tell what is real anymore. Patrick scares him with toy worms and toy snails under his feet, making Squidward fall. Patrick swings over Squidward with a tablecloth over his body, pretending to be a haunted tablecloth. Squidward screams and sprays ink into multiple cups, pitchers, bowls, and pails that Patrick laid out. Patrick swings into a wall and laughs. Squidward runs upstairs while spraying ink into more containers. He enters a spooky baby room with creepy music playing. Squidward says he does not want to hear creepy nursery rhyme music. He hears a creaking sound from a crib behind him. When he looks in the crib, he sees Patrick wearing a creepy baby costume with a nose similar to Squidward's. Patrick calls Squidward, "Dada." Squidward screams and sprays more ink into the crib, then runs out through a window. Squidward falls to the ground and sees a fake version of the Krusty Krab in front of him. He wonders how he wound up there and says he does not want to go inside. A newspaper falls on him. Squidward reads it and gasps, seeing the newspaper is dated 60 years into the future. A conveyor belt appears under him and moves him inside the fake Krusty Krab. Squidward covers his eyes, saying he is afraid to see what is inside. When he looks up, he sees a puppet version of his future elderly self working at the restaurant. The puppet asks if it can help him. Squidward's nose turns into a faucet and he screams ink out of himself. Patrick is operating the old Squidward puppet from above. Squidward has had enough and runs out of the haunted area. Squidward runs away from the haunted area and bumps into Don the whale, who is waiting in line at the lemonade stand. SpongeBob tells Squidward that if he wants to buy black lemonade, he needs to wait at the back of the line. Patrick comes out with a boat full of Squidward's ink and tells Squidward to wait his turn like everyone else. Squidward realizes they have been selling his ink as a refreshment. SpongeBob and Patrick both yell through megaphones that yes, they have been selling it. Don pushes Squidward and complains that Squidward is trying to cut in line. The crowd of customers complain that people think they can just walk right up to the front. Squidward asks if the customers actually drink his ink. The crowd murmurs in agreement. Squidward gets an evil idea. He grabs a megaphone and asks the crowd what if they could buy black lemonade straight from the source. Don says they love the source. The crowd agrees. Squidward takes out a giant fan and blows SpongeBob, Patrick, the boat of ink, and the entire lemonade stand away. Squidward quickly sets up his own stand called Squidward's Black Lemonade. The customers line up at his stand. Don asks where the black lemonade is. Squidward says it is coming right up. He tries to spray ink from his nose, but nothing comes out. He pokes and blows his nose. He tells the customers not to worry and that he just needs recovery time. He wrings out his nose and blows it, only managing to blow out the inside of his nostrils with no ink. A customer named Dave asks if Squidward is okay. Squidward says he is fine. Dave demands his black lemonade. Squidward asks if someone can please scare him. Don the whale grabs Squidward by the neck and threatens to punch him. Squidward screams and sprays ink from his nose onto Don's face. The ink then sprays over the heads of the entire long line of customers. The customers gasp in shock and moan in disgust when they realize black lemonade is actually made from Squidward's ink. The customers are completely grossed out. They trample Squidward and destroy his lemonade stand. Then, all the customers run into Squidward's house and throw up inside. Squidward does not understand why the customers reacted that way, since he thought they wanted his ink. SpongeBob and Patrick appear wearing gloves and aprons while holding trays of cookies. SpongeBob tells Squidward they are out of the black lemonade business because they found something new to sell. Patrick says the black lemonade business is all Squidward's now and they are selling homemade cookies instead. Squidward says a homemade cookie is exactly the comfort food he needs right now. He takes a cookie and eats it. Squidward says the cookies are delicious and asks what is in them. Patrick answers spider eggs. SpongeBob shows Squidward the giant red spider named Mildred, who they met earlier. SpongeBob says Mildred is their new partner. Squidward screams as baby spiders crawl out of his mouth. He sprays more ink from his nose, turning the entire screen black and ending the episode. The episode drew criticism from viewers for several reasons. The concept of Patrick repeatedly torturing Squidward just to harvest his bodily fluid to sell as a drink made many viewers uncomfortable. Unlike other episodes where Squidward might deserve consequences for his actions, the episode shows Squidward suffering even though he did not do anything particularly wrong to Patrick. At the start of the episode, Squidward is mean to Patrick by throwing a rotten lemon at his eye and calling him a hideous freak. However, many viewers felt the punishment Squidward receives throughout the rest of the episode is far too extreme compared to his initial rudeness. The gross-out humor in the episode pushed boundaries that made viewers uncomfortable. The scene where Patrick rips open his skin to reveal his internal organs, including his intestines, is particularly disturbing. The image of Patrick's exposed anatomy speaking to Squidward is graphic for a children's cartoon. The close-up shot of Patrick pulling a bandage from his armpit is another moment viewers found unnecessarily disgusting. Having that same bandage end up in the lemonade that customers drink and then stuck to a customer's tongue amplified the gross factor. The ending where baby spiders crawl out of Squidward's mouth after he eats cookies made with spider eggs is another disturbing image that viewers found hard to watch. The episode features an excessive amount of screaming throughout its runtime. Patrick screams lemonade through his megaphone repeatedly. SpongeBob and Betty both scream through megaphones. Squidward spends most of the episode screaming as he gets scared over and over. The constant loud noises and yelling made the episode feel obnoxious to many viewers. The screaming does not serve the comedy, but instead becomes repetitive and grating. Viewers noted that the episode relies too heavily on characters yelling rather than developing actual jokes or funny situations. SpongeBob's role in the episode troubled many viewers. SpongeBob helps Patrick sell the black lemonade and even encourages the business to continue. SpongeBob seems aware that Patrick is scaring Squidward to get more ink because he tells Patrick to get more supplies. However, SpongeBob does not question whether this is right or try to stop Patrick from tormenting Squidward. This goes against SpongeBob's usual kind-hearted character. SpongeBob typically would not participate in deliberately hurting someone even if that someone is Squidward. The episode makes SpongeBob seem either ignorant or complicit in Patrick's cruel behavior. Patrick's characterization also bothered viewers. Patrick builds an elaborate haunted house complete with mechanical effects, creepy baby costumes, and a fake future version of the Krusty Krab. This level of planning and execution seems far beyond Patrick's usual intelligence level. Patrick is normally portrayed as very stupid and unable to think through complex plans. Yet, in this episode, he successfully creates detailed, scary scenarios and operates them effectively. The inconsistency in how smart or capable Patrick is from scene to scene breaks the internal logic of the character. The customers in the episode also act in ways that viewers found illogical. The customers love drinking the black lemonade throughout most of the episode. They line up eagerly and ask for more. Betty even calls it a unique taste sensation. However, when Squidward sprays ink over their heads at the end, the customers suddenly realize they were drinking ink and become disgusted. This does not make sense because the customers were drinking the exact same substance the entire time. The black liquid clearly looked like ink from the beginning. The customers should have questioned what they were drinking much earlier. Their delayed reaction feels artificial and only exists to punish Squidward. The customers then blame Squidward by trampling him and destroying his stand even though Patrick and SpongeBob were the ones who started selling the ink lemonade in the first place. The customers then go to Squidward's house and vomit inside as revenge. This is victim blaming because Squidward was the one being exploited throughout the episode. Patrick scared Squidward repeatedly without consent to harvest his ink. Squidward only tried to sell his own ink at the end after realizing people wanted it. Yet Squidward receives all the punishment, while Patrick and SpongeBob face no consequences. The haunted house sequence represents a large portion of the episode's runtime. While some viewers appreciated the creative and detailed animation in this section, others felt it dragged on too long. The sequence shows Squidward getting scared over and over in different rooms of the haunted area. Each scare results in more ink spraying into containers. The repetitive nature of this sequence makes it feel like padding rather than meaningful content. The same joke of Squidward getting scared and spraying ink happens multiple times without variation. Viewers also questioned the logic of certain plot points. How did Patrick build such an elaborate haunted house so quickly? Where did he get all the materials and equipment? How did he convince the giant spider to help him? Why does Squidward not simply refuse to leave his house or call the police about Patrick's harassment? These questions have no answers in the episode. The lack of internal consistency makes the episode feel poorly thought out. The ending offers no resolution or lessons learned. Patrick and SpongeBob move on to selling cookies made with spider eggs. They do not acknowledge that they did anything wrong to Squidward. They do not apologize or face any punishment. Squidward ends up with his house full of vomit baby spiders crawling out of his mouth, and presumably no business since the customers now know what black lemonade really is. The episode ends with Squidward suffering, while Patrick and SpongeBob remain happy and oblivious. This lack of justice or character growth left viewers unsatisfied. Many viewers felt the episode represents a broader problem with later seasons of SpongeBob. The show increasingly relied on gross-out humor and torture porn rather than clever writing and character-based comedy. Early seasons of SpongeBob featured creative scenarios, absurd situations, and witty dialogue. Later seasons, including Season 11, where Ink Lemonade aired, began focusing more on shocking viewers with disgusting images and watching characters suffer. The charm of the original show came from its heart and imaginative underwater world, not from showing characters in pain. The episode holds a rating of 4.7 out of 10 on IMDb, which reflects the negative reception from viewers. Many fans of SpongeBob specifically point to Ink Lemonade as an example of why they stopped watching newer episodes. The episode fails to capture what made SpongeBob successful in its early years. Instead of being funny or entertaining, the episode makes viewers uncomfortable and grossed out. The excessive screaming, disturbing imagery, illogical plot points, and mean-spirited treatment of Squidward combine to create an episode that misses the mark. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Squid Baby. Squid Baby aired on September 3rd in 2012 and received an IMDb rating of 5.7 out of 10. Many viewers found Squid Baby uncomfortable to watch and criticized it for being mean-spirited towards Squidward. The episode focuses on Squidward getting a head injury that gives him the mind of an infant and SpongeBob and Patrick attempting to care for him. The episode begins with Squidward in his bathroom listening to a relaxation tape. A narrator on the tape tells Squidward to visualize himself in a private grotto and focus on the soothing nature sounds. Squidward imagines himself in a resort-like bathtub, relaxing peacefully. However, the peaceful sounds are interrupted by laughter that sounds like Patrick and SpongeBob. Squidward opens his eyes and realizes the fantasy is over. He goes to his window and sees SpongeBob and Patrick outside playing with baby toys. Patrick asks SpongeBob how he likes that while calling him baby. SpongeBob laughs and asks Patrick what he thinks about something else while also calling him baby. Both of them laugh together. Squidward opens his window and asks if SpongeBob and Patrick are acting even more infantile than usual this morning. SpongeBob confirms that yes, they are being more childish because he found a box of his old baby toys in his attic and they are playing with them. Squidward pulls down his window blinds in annoyance. SpongeBob shows Patrick his old Teddy Walrus toy and says the stuff really takes him back to his childhood. Patrick sucks on a pacifier and says it makes him feel babyish. Patrick announces he is a baby and starts sucking his thumb. SpongeBob giggles and tells Patrick that babies do not talk like that. SpongeBob demonstrates baby talk by saying goo goo and gaga. Both SpongeBob and Patrick begin talking in baby talk to each other. SpongeBob plays his xylophone while Patrick plays with a ring toss toy. SpongeBob then plays with a mallet and whistle. The two continue playing with various baby toys, making loud noises. Squidward becomes increasingly angry at the noise. He walks out of his house completely naked to confront SpongeBob and Patrick. Squidward complains that the essential oils from his bath were just starting to work when they interrupted him. SpongeBob and Patrick ride by on a scooter. Squidward demands that they keep quiet and says he would appreciate some peace. SpongeBob and Patrick scoot away on the scooter. Squidward yells after them, asking how they dare to scoot away from him when he is scolding them. SpongeBob and Patrick then start playing with a Jack-in-the-Box toy. Squidward demands that they for once act their age. The head pops out of the Jack-in-the-Box, startling SpongeBob and Patrick. Both of them begin crying. Squidward tells them fine and says they can act like infants their whole lives if they want. He says he does not care and announces he is returning to his grown-up lifestyle. Squidward demands they keep the noise down. As Squidward turns to walk back to his house, he slips on a toy boat mobile on the ground. He falls and gets his head stuck inside a scooter toy. The scooter with Squidward's head stuck inside crashes into his mailbox. The impact causes the mailbox to press a button on the back of Squidward's head. This button is labeled Reset Brain. SpongeBob and Patrick stop crying and call out to Squidward with concern. Squidward's head begins to swell up larger and larger. Patrick notices that Squidward is mumbling and drooling like a little baby. SpongeBob says he does not know what is wrong, but Squidward does not look good. SpongeBob decides Squidward should probably see a doctor. SpongeBob tells Patrick to come on so they can take Squidward to the hospital. Patrick tells Squidward to hang in there and promises they will have him fixed up in no time. SpongeBob and Patrick carry Squidward to the hospital. At the hospital, a purple doctor fish examines Squidward. SpongeBob asks the doctor what the prognosis is. The doctor explains that Squidward has a condition known by the medical term head go boom boom itis. The doctor tells them not to worry because Squidward should recover normally over time. However, the doctor warns that Squidward must not receive any more blows to the head or he may remain this way permanently. The doctor instructs SpongeBob and Patrick to care for Squidward as if he were their very own bouncy baby boy and promises Squidward will be fine. The scene cuts to SpongeBob's house where Patrick is playing with baby Squidward. Patrick asks little Squidward if he is ready to have some fun. Patrick throws Squidward up toward the ceiling with great force. Squidward hits the ceiling and gets stuck there. SpongeBob announces that dinner is ready and asks where their little miracle is. SpongeBob looks up and sees Squidward stuck in the ceiling. SpongeBob scolds Patrick, asking how he could do such a thing. SpongeBob climbs up Patrick's body and pulls Squidward out of the ceiling. SpongeBob comforts Squidward, saying they're there to calm him down. SpongeBob reminds Patrick that they are supposed to protect Squidward's head. As SpongeBob says this, he accidentally crashes the top tray of a high chair directly into Squidward's face. SpongeBob then places Squidward in the high chair and tells him dinner is ready. SpongeBob says he made Squidward's favorite food, which is krill tartare with an algae vinaigrette. SpongeBob puts the food on Squidward's high chair tray. SpongeBob tells Squidward to open wide because here comes the food. Squidward turns his head away, rejecting the food. SpongeBob encourages Squidward to eat healthy so he can grow up to be big and cranky. SpongeBob pretends the spoon is an airplane and makes airplane engine noises. He tells Squidward to watch the airplane land in the hangar. SpongeBob sticks the spoon in Squidward's mouth. SpongeBob tells Patrick that sometimes you have to outthink the baby. Squidward immediately spits all the food at SpongeBob's face and then throws the entire plate. Patrick licks all the food off SpongeBob's face and thanks SpongeBob for sharing. SpongeBob decides it is time to lighten things up. SpongeBob asks Squidward if he likes games. Patrick says games is their middle name. SpongeBob and Patrick begin playing a patty cake style game called Kelpie Cake. Squidward watches them and claps his hands. SpongeBob asks Squidward if he likes the game. Patrick confirms that Squidward does like it. SpongeBob and Patrick try to get Squidward to play Kelpie Cake with them. Squidward responds by slapping both SpongeBob and Patrick hard across their faces. The force of the slaps sends both SpongeBob and Patrick flying upward into the air. SpongeBob says this game is kind of dangerous. Squidward crawls away toward the front door and goes outside. SpongeBob and Patrick both yell for Squidward. Outside, a large truck is driving down the street directly toward Squidward. The truck driver falls asleep at the wheel. SpongeBob and Patrick scream for Squidward to watch out. Patrick says not to worry because he has got this situation under control. Patrick lifts up the entire section of pavement that Squidward is crawling on. The truck drives underneath the lifted pavement and flies away into the distance. Patrick then sets the pavement back down. A fanfare plays celebrating the successful rescue. SpongeBob cheers hooray for Patrick. However, SpongeBob then gasps when he realizes the pavement landed directly on top of Squidward's head. SpongeBob calls out Squidward's name with concern. Patrick lifts the pavement back up. SpongeBob grabs Squidward and asks if he is okay. Patrick sets the pavement back down. SpongeBob tells Patrick they need to do a better job of protecting Squidward from harm. The truck that flew away earlier crashes into Squidward's house in the background. SpongeBob and Patrick decide to put Squidward in a cage for his own safety. Squidward sits in the cage crying. SpongeBob tells Squidward there is no need to cry. SpongeBob takes Squidward out of the cage and tries to calm him down by holding him. Patrick tells SpongeBob not to worry because Squidward will be settled down in a couple of minutes. However, Squidward does not stop crying. Patrick sits on the couch watching television while SpongeBob holds the crying Squidward. The scene shows SpongeBob going to bed at night while still holding the crying Squidward. SpongeBob takes a bath while Patrick holds the still crying Squidward. Then the roles reverse with Patrick in the bath while SpongeBob holds Squidward. SpongeBob holds Squidward while Patrick puts on earplugs and then adds noise-canceling headphones on top of the earplugs. SpongeBob and Patrick try to eat a meal while Squidward continues crying. Squidward sits in his high chair eating and spitting food out on SpongeBob and Patrick while still crying. Both SpongeBob and Patrick look completely exhausted while Squidward keeps crying. The French narrator announces that 72 hours have passed. The scene changes to the Krusty Krab restaurant. Mr. Krabs announces it is 1 minute until opening time. Mr. Krabs wonders where his employees are and complains that he does not pay them to be late. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward suddenly appear at the entrance. Lightning flashes dramatically behind them. Patrick says that taking care of a baby is very hard. SpongeBob agrees and says he is exhausted. SpongeBob starts to ask Patrick if he would mind holding Squidward while SpongeBob goes to work. Before SpongeBob can finish his sentence, Patrick falls asleep on one of the restaurant tables. SpongeBob says he guesses it is just him and Squidward then. Mr. Krabs yells at SpongeBob and Squidward to stop dragging their feet. Mr. Krabs demands they get to their workstations immediately. SpongeBob explains that Squidward is in no condition to perform his Krusty Krab duties. SpongeBob turns around to show Mr. Krabs that Squidward has the mind of a baby. Squidward makes baby noises. SpongeBob says the poor guy has the mind of an infant. Mr. Krabs says he does not care if Squidward has seaweed for brains. Mr. Krabs insists that Squidward needs to be behind the cash register. Mr. Krabs explains they have customers outside begging to hand him their money. The scene shows customers outside the restaurant windows holding money and begging to come inside. SpongeBob tries to protest, but Mr. Krabs interrupts, saying no buts. Mr. Krabs orders both of them to get to work immediately. SpongeBob slams into a table, causing Squidward to fly through the air and land in the register boat. SpongeBob notices Squidward is already settled into his workstation. SpongeBob says maybe Squidward is ready for his Krusty Krab duties after all. SpongeBob decides to make it official. SpongeBob tries to hand Squidward his Krusty Krab employee hat, but Squidward rejects it and pushes it away. SpongeBob realizes how silly he is being. SpongeBob grabs a high chair and picks up Squidward. SpongeBob says Squidward needs a high chair. SpongeBob places the high chair near the register and puts Squidward in it. Squidward immediately starts banging his head on the cash register. SpongeBob realizes Squidward also needs duct tape. SpongeBob duct tapes Squidward to the chair to keep him from moving. SpongeBob then puts Squidward's Krusty Krab employee hat on his head. SpongeBob tells Squidward he is so proud of him. SpongeBob says just yesterday Squidward was drooling all over him. SpongeBob says look at Squidward now, working and sitting in a big boy seat. SpongeBob's eyes fill with tears of pride. Mr. Krabs says that is enough emotion. Mr. Krabs announces it is time to serve customers. The customers race into the restaurant to place their orders. SpongeBob reminds Squidward that he will be right behind him for support. A customer named Billy approaches the register. Billy asks if he can get a Krabby Patty and a large kelp shake, please. Squidward makes baby noises and hits his own head with a rattle. Billy looks confused. Billy asks how much he owes. Squidward drools, laughs, and starts sucking on Billy's hand. SpongeBob peeks his head out from the order window. Billy looks annoyed. SpongeBob scolds Squidward, saying that Billy's hand is not for eating. SpongeBob takes a napkin and polishes Billy's hand clean. SpongeBob says there they are as good as new. However, Squidward then starts sucking on Billy's entire head. SpongeBob tells Squidward that Billy's head is not for eating either. SpongeBob pulls Squidward off Billy's head. SpongeBob apologizes to Billy for the inconvenience. Mr. Krabs tells the boys to hop to it because they have not even taken their first order yet. SpongeBob says yes, Mr. Krabs. SpongeBob hands Squidward a pencil and a pad of paper. SpongeBob tells Squidward he knows what to do. Squidward grabs the pencil and paper and laughs. Squidward throws the pieces of paper into the kitchen. SpongeBob thanks Squidward and says he can count on him. SpongeBob notices that Squidward doodled all over the order papers instead of writing actual orders. SpongeBob asks the customer if the order will be for here or to go. SpongeBob peeks out the order window where Squidward is laughing and tossing papers around everywhere. SpongeBob tells Squidward they have to work on his penmanship. Squidward laughs and doodles all over a customer named Nat's face with the pencil. Nat walks away screaming about his face and also his leg, but mostly his face. A customer named Pilar asks if anyone is going to take an order or what. Squidward opens the cash register, which hits him in the head. Squidward starts crying. SpongeBob exits the kitchen and picks up Squidward to comfort him. SpongeBob mistakenly believes that Pilar yelled at Squidward. SpongeBob gives Pilar a furious look. SpongeBob scolds Pilar for yelling at a poor defenseless baby. SpongeBob says Pilar ought to be ashamed. Pilar says she is done playing baby games. Pilar then notices a terrible smell coming from Squidward. Pilar says, "Oh my," Neptune in disgust. Squidward continues crying. Squidward and SpongeBob both notice that Squidward has a very stinky diaper. Other customers start asking what that smell is. Mr. Krabs comes over asking what is going on. Mr. Krabs smells the awful odor and addresses Squidward. Squidward bangs his head. Mr. Krabs asks Squidward where his manners are. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs to watch Squidward's head. Mr. Krabs asks why SpongeBob does not watch Squidward's diaper instead. SpongeBob notices the stinky diaper. Mr. Krabs orders SpongeBob to get it changed immediately. SpongeBob says yes sir multiple times. SpongeBob goes to a table to change the diaper where customers are currently eating their meals. A customer named Fred complains that they are eating there. SpongeBob apologizes. SpongeBob then tries to change Squidward's diaper on the floor. Another customer complains that they are trying to walk there. SpongeBob apologizes again. SpongeBob then tries to change the diaper near the condiment station. A customer named Susie Fish notices the dirty diaper and is disgusted. Susie Fish complains that she was about to get ketchup from that area. SpongeBob apologizes once more. SpongeBob takes Squidward to the register boat to change the diaper there. SpongeBob tells Squidward to hold still. SpongeBob begins the diaper change saying, "Oh boy, Mr." Krabs appears behind them and asks if SpongeBob is out of his mind. Mr. Krabs says they cannot change a baby diaper out in front of the customers. Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob to take Squidward to the back where the food is prepared. The customers become disgusted and start leaving the restaurant. Mr. Krabs is completely fed up and unable to handle any more chaos. Mr. Krabs orders SpongeBob to get the poopy baby out of his restaurant. SpongeBob starts crying with tears in his eyes. SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs that if his poopy baby is not welcome at the restaurant, then SpongeBob is not staying either. SpongeBob starts to leave, but slips on Squidward's baby rattle that is lying on the floor. SpongeBob yells "Whoa" repeatedly as he slides across the floor out of control. SpongeBob ends up sliding into the kitchen. As SpongeBob slides through the kitchen, he accidentally bangs Squidward's head on several frying pans and then on the ice machine. The impacts make Squidward cry even more. Ice from the ice machine falls and lands on top of Squidward's head. SpongeBob gasps in horror at what just happened. He calls out Squidward's name with great concern. However, when the ice melts off Squidward's head, it reveals that the ice actually made Squidward's swollen head feel better. Squidward's head shrinks back down to its normal size. With his headache now healed, Squidward transforms back to his normal adult self. Squidward stands up looking confused and angry. Squidward asks where he is and what is going on. SpongeBob tells Squidward that he is back to his normal grown-up self. Squidward says of course he is grown up and asks why he would not be. Squidward then notices he is wearing a diaper. Squidward asks SpongeBob if he is wearing a diaper. SpongeBob confirms that yes, Squidward is wearing a diaper. Squidward asks if the diaper is full. Squidward looks inside his diaper and screams in horror at what he sees. SpongeBob tries to explain that he was going to change the diaper, but he got wrapped up in everything. Squidward puts his hand over SpongeBob's mouth to silence him. Squidward says in a deadpan voice to stop talking. Squidward demands that SpongeBob never says another word about this situation ever again. SpongeBob comments that kids grow up so fast. The episode ends. The episode received criticism from viewers for multiple reasons. The premise of watching Squidward be humiliated and treated like an actual infant made many viewers uncomfortable. Unlike other episodes where Squidward might deserve consequences for his mean behavior, this episode shows Squidward's suffering even though the accident was not really his fault. Squidward was simply trying to get SpongeBob and Patrick to be quiet so he could relax. His injury happened because he slipped on their toy. Many viewers felt the punishment of being turned into a baby and cared for poorly was excessive and cruel. The opening scene where SpongeBob and Patrick play with baby toys troubled viewers. Both characters are adults, but they spend several minutes acting like toddlers and speaking in baby talk. This reinforced a pattern in later seasons where SpongeBob and Patrick became increasingly childish rather than maintaining their original personalities. Early seasons showed SpongeBob as optimistic and energetic, but still capable of adult responsibilities. Later seasons, including Season 9, made SpongeBob act more like an actual child. Patrick also became dumber and more destructive in later seasons. The opening scene of this episode exemplifies this character decay. The way SpongeBob and Patrick care for baby Squidward is dangerously negligent. Patrick throws Squidward at the ceiling so hard that Squidward gets stuck there. SpongeBob accidentally smashes a high chair tray into Squidward's face. Patrick lifts an entire section of pavement to save Squidward from a truck, but then drops the pavement directly on Squidward's head. The doctor specifically warned them that Squidward must not receive any more blows to the head, or he would stay as a baby permanently. Yet SpongeBob and Patrick repeatedly cause Squidward to hit his head throughout the episode. Their incompetence puts Squidward in constant danger. Viewers found this frustrating because the characters ignore the one simple instruction they were given. The 72-hour crying sequence bothered many viewers. Squidward cries nonstop for 3 full days while SpongeBob and Patrick become increasingly exhausted. The scene shows Squidward crying in multiple locations over an extended time period. This felt like filler content that added nothing to the story. Watching a character cry continuously is not entertaining or funny. The crying also produces a grating, annoying sound that makes the episode unpleasant to watch. Some viewers had to mute their televisions during this extended crying sequence. Mr. Krabs shows no concern for Squidward's medical condition. When SpongeBob explains that Squidward has the mind of an infant, Mr. Krabs says he does not care. Mr. Krabs forces Squidward to work at the cash register, despite Squidward being completely unable to perform the job. Mr. Krabs only cares about making money from customers. He shows no empathy for his injured employee. This makes Mr. Krabs seem like a heartless boss. While Mr. Krabs has always been greedy, this episode takes his greed to an uncomfortable extreme where he exploits someone with a serious head injury. The restaurant scenes are filled with gross-out humor involving Squidward's diaper. Squidward fouls his diaper while working at the register. The episode includes close-up shots of the dirty diaper and emphasizes the terrible smell. Customers react with disgust. SpongeBob tries to change Squidward's diaper in multiple inappropriate locations, including next to where customers are eating next to the condiment station and eventually in the kitchen where food is prepared. Mr. Krabs even suggests changing the diaper in the kitchen. The extended focus on dirty diapers and bathroom humor made many viewers uncomfortable. This type of gross-out content became more common in later SpongeBob seasons. The Bikini Bottom customers show no compassion towards Squidward. They complain about the service and become angry even though Squidward clearly has a serious medical problem. No customers offer to help or suggest calling for medical assistance. They only care about getting their food orders. When they discover Squidward has a dirty diaper, they react with disgust rather than sympathy. The customers act cruel and self-centered throughout the episode. This made the customers unlikable and highlighted how mean-spirited the episode's tone had become. SpongeBob also makes questionable decisions throughout the episode. When a customer complains, SpongeBob mistakenly thinks the customer yelled at baby Squidward and scolds the customer for being mean. SpongeBob fails to maintain professional behavior in the workplace. SpongeBob also does not recognize that bringing a baby to work at a restaurant is inappropriate and unsanitary. While SpongeBob tries his best to care for Squidward, his constant failures make him seem incompetent rather than well-meaning. The ending provides minimal resolution. Squidward accidentally getting hit in the head multiple times and then having ice fall on him somehow cures his condition. The ice apparently reverses the head injury and restores Squidward's adult mind. This makes no medical sense and feels like a lazy way to end the episode. Squidward discovers he is wearing a full diaper and screams in horror. Squidward demands that SpongeBob never speak of what happened again. There is no apology from SpongeBob or Patrick for their negligent care. There are no consequences for their repeated mistakes that endangered Squidward. The episode simply ends with Squidward humiliated and traumatized. Many viewers felt the episode represents broader problems with later SpongeBob seasons. The show increasingly focused on humiliating Squidward rather than clever humor. Episodes became meaner in tone and relied more on gross-out content. Characters behaved more stupidly and cruelly than in early seasons. The heart and creativity that made early SpongeBob special was replaced with lazy writing and uncomfortable premises. Squid Baby exemplifies these problems by taking a character who is already frequently mistreated and subjecting him to an especially degrading situation with no comedic payoff. The episode fails to find humor in its premise. The concept of someone getting a head injury and regressing to infancy could potentially be used for gentle fish-out-of-water comedy. However, this episode instead focuses on watching Squidward suffer and be humiliated. The extended crying, the dirty diaper scenes, and the negligent care all emphasize Squidward's misery without providing any clever jokes or heartwarming moments. The episode feels mean rather than funny. Viewers who loved early SpongeBob for its optimism and creativity found this episode depressing and unpleasant to watch. The episode stands as an example of how the series had changed from its original vision. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.